Hey everybody, Black Ninja 797 here, and welcome to the very first episode of Call of Duty Zombies Myth-Busting Mondays. This is going to end up being an incredible start to a brand new chapter here on the channel. And I think one of the best ways we can start this series off is with a stellar myth for you guys, and the final myth is definitely going to be so. The final myth of the first ever episode is going to be, can you one-shot the Pentagon Thief in 5 on Black Ops 1. I'm very much looking forward to testing all the myths that you send my way. And if you guys have a myth of your own that you would like to have be featured in next week's episode, please put them in the comment section down below or in my Discord server, which is going to be linked down below in the description. But with all that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed the very first episode of Call of Duty Zombies Myth-Busting Mondays. Myth: do you knife faster with speed cola? Alrighty guys, so for the first ever myth of Call of Duty Zombies Myth-Busting Mondays, this is submitted in by JJ Lipscomb. Now I want to show you guys something here on Cold War, because I believe that of all the games, this is the game that we most likely have the odds of this working on. Is that when it comes to Speed Cola, you guys can see that you can upgrade it in Cold War. You can give it a whole bunch of different proficiencies as you rank it up. Nowhere in these proficiencies does it say that you can increase your melee speed. In fact, any of the perks in Black Ops Cold War do not say that it increases melee speed. However, we're still going to test this nonetheless, so I am on D machine and I'm running over to the Speed Cola machine, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to melee with my fists right next to the Speed Cola machine, just show you guys the base or the control test, and then I'm going to purchase Speed Cola with all of the upgrades that are possible for it, and then showing you guys that melee speed. Alrighty, so here is a side-by-side comparison of meleeing with and without Speed Cola, with the one in the upper left being without Speed Cola. And as you guys can see, the melee speed is literally identical. They are not different regardless of whether or not you have Speed Cola. So that means that myth 1 of today's episode is busted. You do not melee faster with or without Speed Cola, is the exact same speed. Myth: if a player without Widow's Wine throws a grenade, and a player with Widow's Wine picks it up, does that grenade become a Widow's Wine grenade? Alrighty guys, so myth 2 is going to be submitted in by Tyler. In order to test this myth, I am playing on Shadows of Evil with Tyler himself. Alright, so Tyler has Widow's Wine and I do not. So I have a normal frag grenade and he has the Widow's Wine grenades. If I throw my frag grenade at Tyler and he picks it up, does my grenade that is now technically Tyler's become a Widow's Wine grenade, or is it just going to end up acting as a normal frag? So here it goes. I'm going to throw a grenade at Tyler now and he's going to pick it up, and I'm just going to keep my eye on it. And as you guys can see, it blew up just like a normal frag grenade would, not like the Widow's Wine grenades. And to prove to you that Tyler has Widow's Wine, he's going to throw some grenades now, and you guys can see that the explosion reaction is different. Which means that myth 2 of today's episode is also busted. The grenades do not get changed even if you end up having Widow's Wine. One player's grenades is not the same as yours. Myth: can you do the giant fly trap Easter egg with grenades? Alrighty guys, so myth 3 of today's episode is going to be submitted in by Dan. Now, just so you guys know, when it comes to the Easter egg on the giant, the fly trap Easter egg specifically, it requires you normally end up using a pack-a-punch gun. Now, here's the thing, is that Dan's myth is asking if there's a way around this. Can you use a grenade instead? So I'm going to give an example of a step that where you would normally just shoot a pack-a-punch gun down this alley and you try to hit a fuse box. I'm currently trying to throw grenades at it right now to see if whether or not the grenade reacts with this step. And it looks like so far it does not. And then what I decided to do for comparison's sake is I decided to do the step legitimately and shot my upgraded Man of War at the fuse box, and the objects immediately flew in the air with no problem, which means that I was indeed hitting the fuse box, it's just that the grenades were not reacting with it. So that means that myth 3 of today's episode is busted as well. You cannot do the giant fly trap Easter egg with grenades, you must use a pack-a-punch gun. Myth: does Leroy/Arthur in Buried run faster if you have a different knife? Alrighty guys, so myth 4 of today's episode is going to be submitted in by Ace of Spades. Now, Leroy, or technically Arthur, which is going to be his canon name, but I'm just going to call him Leroy going forward, we need to end up having it where I end up stabbing him with different melee weapons to see if whether or not he can run faster. So I've got Booze to end up getting Leroy's attention, and then I'm going to stab him so that way he chases me. I'm going to end up having it where I end up doing this once with a combat knife, then once with a Bowie knife, then finally the Galvan Knuckles. So this is Leroy's controlled speed with the combat knife. Okay, so now let's buy the Bowie knife and see if anything has changed. So once again, I've still got booze in my inventory, so Leroy will chase me. And it really doesn't look like, by eyeballing it, that he runs any faster. Alright, so now let's get some Galvin Knuckles and do one last test. So I hit Leroy with some Galvin Knuckles and I'm running away again. And once again, it looks like he's really not running any faster than he normally would with the other two prior melee weapons. He just runs around the exact same speed. So here's all three tests side by side, and really, honestly, I can't see a difference. So I think it's safe to say that Myth 4 is also busted. We can't get Leroy to run any faster with any different melee weapon that we choose to hit him with. He just runs the same. Alrighty guys, and now we're moving on to the final myth of today's episode, and once again is going to be, can you one-shot the Pentagon Thief in 5 on Black Ops 1 zombies? So let's load up Black Ops 1, load up 5, and get as far as we can until the Pentagon Thief spawns in, and see if there's anything that we can use to be able to kill him in one single shot. Myth, can you one-shot the Pentagon Thief? Alrighty guys, so the final myth of the very first episode of Call of Duty Zombies Myth-Busting Mondays is going to be submitted in by Dead Sled 8. Now let's discuss. So when it comes to Black Ops 1 5, the Pentagon Thief is a strong son of a bitch. This guy takes forever to die. Now, when it also comes to the Pentagon Thief, it's very, very hard to not only kill him, but it's also very hard to get the circumstances to be able to have even something in your inventory that can kill him, let alone one-shot him. There's no gobblegums, there's no elixirs, the perks in this game are pretty basic, the guns are really not good until you pack-a-punch them, the Winter's Howl sucks. I was originally thinking that my best luck would be a death machine, but the timing of that would be impeccable because I just can't spawn in with console commands like I did with Left 4 Dead, because the COD games are hard to spawn in things with console commands, and it's possible that plutonium might be shut down, so I don't have Black Ops 1 on plutonium, so I just decided to do this on my Xbox. The thing that was bothering me with this myth a little bit was I was trying to do it as legitimately as I could, number one, because of the limited resources I have, and number two, I'm pretty sure that Dead Sled, the way that you're asking this, you want to know if you can do this in a legitimate game, because you want to be able to do it in an actual legitimate game. So I was thinking really heavily on, like, what is in 5 that I can end up using to my advantage? So I was doing some research, and I found this article, I found the wiki for Call of Duty, specifically talking about the Pentagon Thief in particular. And this is just normal lore and mumbo-jumbo, but there's a specific part right here at the end saying that if you have the Pentagon Thief run into the electric trap on 5 upstairs, this will immediately kill him. Now, I tried to look up a clip of this on YouTube, seeing if somebody was able to get the Pentagon Thief to run into the trap, but none exist on YouTube because, according to the article of the wiki as well, it says that the Pentagon Thief will avoid these on instinct. So I don't think that Treyarch wanted you to intentionally try to one-shot the Pentagon Thief by just having him run into the trap. So the game doesn't let you do this. So I would say that since I have zero proof of this happening other than just the claim on the wiki, I'm just going to leave the myth at plausible for now, because I would like to believe that if the wiki is saying you can do this, this is one of the more trustworthy sources. And also the fact that when it comes to the Pentagon Thief, it doesn't necessarily have to be a gun per se. I'm pretty sure Dead Sled is more concerned about if you can one-shot him, regardless of what you're using to one-shot him. I think that the biggest thing he's concerned about is whether or not if you can do it legitimately, and the electric trap is a legitimate thing you can get on 5. You would just probably have to do some finessing to get him to run through it in the first place. Myth. Are certain gobblegums preferred by the machine on certain maps? Alrighty guys, so the first myth of today's episode is going to be submitted in by Glabursko. So now Glabursko, just for the record by the way guys, is brand new to the Call of Duty series, so he literally has no idea how things work. So I am going to pick this myth so that way I can help out Glabursko. So Glabursko, I want to show you something here from the Call of Duty wiki. I'm going to show you this part right here, which explains, my friend, that the gobblegums are assigned randomly. You do not get a certain one favored on a particular map. Is just completely by chance, which means that your myth for today's episode is busted. I hope that this clears the air and makes the game a little bit more understandable for you, since I know that you're new. Myth. Does Quick Revive switch to its single-player variant when your partner leaves the game? Alrighty guys, so Myth 2 is going to be submitted in by Vader. Now in order to do this, I'm going to be using a mod menu that I found on the Steam Workshop called Amethyst. This is going to end up being basically what is the closest thing to the old Left 4 Dead mod menu that we use for Left 4 Dead Myth-Busting Mondays. It essentially does the same thing, but it's specifically done for Black Ops 3, and this is going to make this much easier. So I'm just going to auto give myself Quick Revive with Dan here in a lobby. What's going to happen is that I'm just going to just simply revive Dan just to show you guys that it is indeed the co-op variant, and then Dan is going to leave the game, and then I'm going to suicide, and then that way I can see if whether or not it switches over to the single player variant. Alright, so here I am finally giving myself all the perks, because it took me a minute to find it since this was the very first time I was using the mod menu, and it's still new to me. So now that I've got all the perks, including Quick Revive, I'm going to have Dan kill himself, so that way I can revive him. Alright, so Dan is going to hold the frag grenade and kill himself now, and as you guys can see, I can revive him with the co-op variant. Now he's going to leave the game, and I'm going to try this solo. So Dan's going to leave the game right now, and now I'm going to open up the mod menu and kill myself real quick. And upon downing myself with the mod menu, you guys can see that I do indeed get the opportunity to get back up again. It doesn't just kill me and end the game, it just only puts me in the downed animation. So that means that Myth 2 is confirmed. You indeed have it where if you end up buying Quick Revive in a co-op game, if somebody leaves and you were just playing by yourself, it becomes the single player variant. Myth, can you get Quick Revive on Ascension from the monkeys after you've used all 3 of your purchases in solo? Alrighty guys, so Myth 3 is going to be submitted in by JJ Lipscomb. So JJ, what I'm going to do to test your myth is that I'm going to end up playing on the Black Ops 3 version of Ascension so I can once again use this Amethyst mod. The idea is that I'm going to be removing and adding perks from my inventory multiple different times so that way the Quick Revive machine will eventually disappear. Now I would also like to point out, by the way, that when I was doing research for this myth, I did not see anything saying that you can't do this. Sources I used, such as the Call of Duty wiki, said that the monkeys perks are going to be completely random, and this does include Quick Revive within that list. So I'd like to believe at least that this myth is feasible rather than just flat out busted. And I would also like to believe this by also showing you guys what I did with the Amethyst mod, which is that as soon as Quick Revive was gone and I gave myself a Perkaholic one more time, Quick Revive was within that list. So JJ, I want to leave your myth at least plausible. The reason why I'm not just flat out calling it confirmed is because I'm not too familiar with this Amethyst mod quite yet to know if whether or not it was just the mod plugging Quick Revive back in, or if it was using assets from the actual map I was playing on, which could have included the monkeys. And I don't see anything opposing it, so I don't also think it's busted either. So I think that plausible is at least fair for now. At least the Black Ops 3 version. Myth. When Quick Revive disappears, can you still get it from a Wonder Fizz machine? Alrighty guys, so Myth 4 is going to be submitted in by Dan. Now, as you guys know, in Cold War, you can just buy whatever perk you want out of the Wonder Fizz machine. So I was like, okay, this should be easy. I will just down myself 3 times with Quick Revive on solo, so that way it will go away, and then I can just go buy one out of the Wonder Fizz machine. There we go, it'd be, myth confirmed, problem solved. But when I went to go buy Quick Revive and down myself again, even though I am in solo, when this zombie downed me, it actually just flat out ended the game, which that should not happen. I don't know if this is a glitch or if they changed it in Cold War, but this is something I was not expecting. Now, originally, just like a moment ago when we were doing Myth 3, minus the possibility of it either being the mod menu itself giving me Quick Revive, or the fact that it's taking it from the random monkey perk that you can get on Ascension, there could be the possibility that Wonder Fizz, which is in the Black Ops 3 version of Ascension, could have been giving me Quick Revive, even though my Quick Revive machine was gone. Now, Dan was also playing in his own game, and he was just going up to the Wonder Fizz with infinite money, just buying it back to back to back to back to back to back to back, and he could not pull Quick Revive. But I know that the Wonder Fizz, just like the monkeys, are random, and even though some perks are higher likelihood than others, Quick Revive I don't think is excluded from the list, so it should have at least been possible. So since these last 2 myths have just been RNG chance with perks, I'm just going to label this also at plausible because I can't explain why other than just by sheer bad luck why we were not getting Quick Revive. Alrighty guys, but now we're moving on to the final myth, and once again is going to be, can the Pentagon Thief steal your weapon if you are holding a grenade? Will he just steal the grenade or will he do something else? So let's move over to Black Ops 1 now and see what happens. Myth. Can the Pentagon Thief steal your weapon if you hold a grenade? Alrighty guys, so the final myth is going to be submitted in by Ace of Spades. So I am once again here on 5 in Black Ops 1, and I'm switching over to round 6 right now with the Pentagon Thief spawning in, and I'm going to hold a frag grenade so that way hopefully he does not grab my MPL or my MP5K. So let's just see where he spawns in. I'm running around, can't quite find him yet. As soon as I get in the elevator and I turn around, he's appearing around the corner. So now let's hold the grenade. So Pentagon Thief, come at me. So I'm holding the grenade, and he ends up taking... He actually steals my MP5K. Apparently, even though I was holding a grenade, he just takes it out of my pocket anyway. So that means that the final myth is busted. The Pentagon Thief will take your gun even if you were holding a frag grenade, just because he is the master at pickpocketing. Alrighty guys. Myth. Does the ray gun Mark 1 or the ray gun Mark 2 shoot or reload faster when they are pack-a-punched? Alrighty guys, so for myth number 1 of today's episode, this is submitted in by Ace of Spades. So we are in the plutonium copy of Black Ops 2, so that way we can spawn in ray guns with cheats. And basically what we are going to do is that we are going to have it where I have a normal Mark II ray gun, and Dan has a pack-a-punched Mark II ray gun. And we're going to be doing the reload test first. So we're each going to shoot a burst of the ray gun Mark II, and then we're going to count to 3, and then we're going to reload the exact same time and see if whether or not that the ammo will go back to a full clip at the exact same time for each of us. Alright, so here is going to be the first test. Dan has the pack-a-punch ray gun, and it looks like it does reload faster in comparison to the unpack-a-punched ray gun. But I wanted to let you guys know real quick is that according to Dan, this is actually deceptive because that's not what he saw on his screen. According to Dan, he actually said that I reload faster, which doesn't make any sense. So I decided to spawn in a pack-a-punched Mark II ray gun myself and compare the two. So this is the normal Mark II ray gun, and it's based reload speed. And now I'm going to switch over to the Mark II and do the exact same thing. And yeah, the reload animation is actually identical. Here's going to be the footage again, except that they're right next to each other, with the pack-a-punch ray gun being in the middle and the unpack-a-punch ray gun being in the upper left-hand corner, and they're the same. And then here's going to be the fire rate test, and it looks like that both ray guns take about 2 Mississippi seconds from how fast I count in order to end up getting rid of 9 bullets and going back down to 0. So yeah, I would say that the ray gun Mark II doesn't really change regardless if it's pack-a-punched or not. And the same thing goes for the ray gun Mark 1. We're just only including 1 in today's video just because we do not want to have this myth drag out too long. So yeah, Ace, your myth is busted here today, but thank you for submitting it our way. Please do submit more. Myth. Can somebody's game crash from too many invites? Alrighty guys, myth 2 of today's episode is submitted in by Glabursko. Now this POV is going to be from Dan, and Dan is going to spam invite Glabursko. Now, we're going to be seeing if whether or not Glabursko will end up having his game crash, or even if Dan's game will crash because one of their PCs cannot handle the invite spam. Now, I can just tell you this right away, is that when it comes to this type of myth, it is hard to prove it as busted, because I can't vouch for the entire world saying this will never happen to you. But what I can say is this, is that it's definitely at least plausible. I think it's self-explanatory that nobody's internet or PC or hardware for that matter is going to be perfect. So there very well is the chance that you can end up having somebody's game crash. It's just that for us, we were not able to have it happen to us, at least in the video, even though we've had it happen multiple times. So the best we can do is leave it at plausible for now. Myth. On Shadows of Evil, can you advance the rounds by hitting the Shadow Man in beast form? Alrighty guys, myth 3 is going to be submitted in by Dan. Now just for some context for this myth, in case you guys did not know, there is a mechanic that you can end up doing on Shadows of Evil. If you take a gun and you shoot the Shadow Man in the spawn, you can advance the rounds in increments of 5, all the way up until 15. Now, we're trying to see if whether or not you can do this in the beast form, because the beast form has some like electricity powers, and he does have parkour so you can reach areas on the map. But unfortunately, in this case, without being able to have the preset grabbing areas, you can't really parkour to get to the Shadow Man. The spawn is just kind of too confined and tight. And I do believe if we open up the spawn door to try to get a area that we can end up grabbing onto so we can go to where the Shadow Man exactly is, I think he just disappears by then. So I think it's safe to say that this myth is busted. Myth. On Shadows of Evil, can you advance past round 15 by shooting the Shadow Man with a death machine? Alrighty guys, myth 4 is actually going to end up being a team myth, because when we're trying to do Dan's myth, we were just deciding to just fuck around with the Shadow Man and just use different things. And one of the things we thought would be kind of fun to test would be a death machine. So we wanted to see if whether or not the death machine would allow us to get past round 15, because normally that's where you end up getting capped at when you try to advance the rounds by shooting the Shadow Man. So Dan is going to end up using a death machine that he spawns in with the Amethyst mod, and one of the ways you can tell he is shooting the Shadow Man is because in the Amethyst mod he has it where drops will spawn where he shoots, and they're spawning right on top of the Shadow Man's head. So the Shadow Man is definitely being shot right now, but you guys can see that the closest we've managed to get so far is round 5, and the death machine's like not being recognized. I think the only reason we're at round 5 is because of the fact that we were also shooting with normal guns, such as me and Glabursko. So I think it's busted. I don't want to be busted. It would be kind of cool if we could do it this way, but I think that they just didn't program it in, so I think it's busted. Alrighty guys, so now we are moving on to the final myth, and once again is going to be, can you kill the Margwa in 10 seconds or less? Is there a better method than using pop shocks? So let's go back into the game now and see if we can do it. Myth, can you kill the Margwa in 10 seconds or less? Alrighty guys, so the final myth of today's episode is another team myth. Now for some context, the way we're going to be testing this is that I have an upgraded starting pistol on Shadows of Evil, is the Meat Wagon, it's basically the Mustang and Sally, and with the Margwa having no damage being dealt to him so far, I'm going to spam him and see how fast I can kill him. So here we go. Ready, go. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, 13 Mississippi, 14 Mississippi. So after 14 Mississippi seconds of just endlessly just shooting the Margwa, he ended up dying. The reason why it was 14 Mississippi seconds, even though I kept shooting, is because I couldn't tell with the muzzle flash, but the guys heard an audio cue saying that the Margwa was dead, so I'm going to end up taking the guys' word for it, and 14 Mississippi seconds is just a little bit over 10. So unfortunately I gotta call the myth at busted, but it was extremely close. I just thought that if we ended up having a unlimited ammo Meat Wagon, that even though there's the animations where the Margwa's mouth can get closed and he's also in the stun lock, I thought if we would just endlessly just shoot him, that eventually we could just kill all of his heads quick enough, but unfortunately we're just a bit too slow. And I don't think it was that I was missing. I do believe that the splash damage would have made up for any missing shots, but plus also I was just aiming in the general direction. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's busted, but I am glad that we tested it. So yeah, guys. Myth. Do fire sales stack? Alrighty guys, so the very first myth of today's episode is submitted in by Reap5296. So Reap, thank you for submitting in your very first myth into the series. We appreciate you, my friend. And so we are going to be testing of whether or not that we can end up stacking the fire sales. So we're going to be doing this on Black Ops 3 and popping Immolation, Liquidation, so that way we can just put the fire sales into the map with ease. And basically we're just going to show you a control and then going to be showing you some of them stacking. So the very first fire sale that we activated, we're just only going to be activating one, just showing you how that long it will last. And it looks like that one single fire sale is going to last you exactly 30 seconds, which means that now if we stack the fire sales, they need to last more than 30 seconds. Okay, so now let's spawn in 2 fire sale drops at the same time and pick them up at the same time. Now, if each fire sale lasts for 30 seconds, if there is 3 fire sales in a Immolation, Liquidation, Gobblegum, if you were to pop all 3 fire sales at the exact same time, then that means that you should have a 1 minute and 30 second long box, which means that you will be having plenty of time to get like a wonder weapon or whatever gun you want at the mystery box. Now, I am going to be fast forwarding the footage a bit because I do not want this footage to be dragged out too long, but basically, long story short, my friend, if you pop multiple fire sales, they will indeed stack, which means the myth is confirmed. If you want to end up popping a Immolation, Liquidation on, like, let's say Black Ops 3, it will give you a 1 minute and 30 second long fire sale for everybody to use. I have done this myself multiple times on Black Ops 3, it's a very great strategy, but now you can use it as well. Myth. In Shadows of Evil, do double points affect the amount of points you get when a ritual ends? So Myth 2 is submitted in by DeadSled8. Now I want to show you really quickly here on the screen, guys, that when it comes to the points here for a given ritual, this is going to end up being the control of how many points you will get without double points. So that way we know what it's supposed to be, and it looks like it's 500 points by default. Now here we are doing another ritual with a permanent double points active, and as it finishes, you guys can see that the amount of points does not change. It is once again 500 points. So that's going to end up meaning that the second myth of today's episode is busted. You do not get more points from a ritual with double points. It is just the same at 500. Myth. In Shadows of Evil, can you complete the 4th ritual sacrifice with the Margwa from the 2nd ritual still alive? Alrighty guys, so Myth 3 is going to be submitted in by Tyler. Now we're just going to be continuing straight from where we left off with Myth 2 because this is the exact same game where we will end up testing Myth 2. So we are going to be taking the Margwa that we spawned in from doing the boxing gym ritual, and then we are just going to keep him alive until we end up finishing our final ritual, which is going to end up being where we place Jackie Vincent's badge inside of the Ruby Rabbit. Now, even though it's a complete cluster F inside of the Ruby Rabbit, with the Margwa still alive, we were indeed able to complete the 4th and final ritual for our game, which means that the Margwa from the 2nd one can still be alive. And in other words, multiple Margwas can just be alive in your game, which means that Myth 3 is indeed confirmed. You can complete the rituals regardless if a Margwa is still spawned in. In Shadows of Evil, I like how so far this has just become the Shadows of Evil episode. When shooting the Shadow Man, are your points doubled if a double points is active? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 is going to be submitted in by Dan. Now once again, we need another control test, so me and Dan are just going to shoot the Shadow Man from 0 points all the way up until we get to round 15, just to show you how many points you get per round advancement. So for round 5, we got 1,000. For round 10, we got 5,000, and for round 15, we ended up getting 1,600 points, which is now going to be our control or standard for this myth. Now this is going to be the test with double points on, at least at the 2nd stage and the 3rd stage, because in order to end up getting a double points before the Shadow Man disappears, the earliest we were able to get it with our mod menu was spawning it in by the time that was already round 5, because this mod menu sometimes takes forever to boot up. So at least for when we switch over to round 10 and for round 15, while double points is active and shooting the Shadow Man, the points are as follows. We end up getting 5,000 points for round 10, and we end up getting 1,600 for round 15. Which therefore means that this myth is busted. Double points does not affect the points that you get while shooting the Shadow Man in the spawn. It does not apply here. Alrighty guys, so now we're moving on to the final myth of today's episode, and once again is going to be, can you remove the black and white filter that is on Ascension before you end up turning on the power switch? Is there a way, or something in the settings, or maybe even perhaps a gobblegum that can remove said feature? And Ace not only submitted the myth, but he also ended up giving a suggestion on how he thinks this could work. So I'm going to take his suggestion and test it out now, and see if whether or not that this myth would end up being confirmed. So let's switch over to Ascension now and see if we can end up making this happen. Myth, can you remove the black and white filter on Ascension? Alrighty guys, so the final myth is submitted in by Ace of Spades. Now Ace recommends that we end up using the eye candy gobblegum in the Black Ops 3 version of Ascension. Alright, so now I've got eye candy in my inventory, and let's end up popping it. So the colors do indeed change. I am definitely tripping on LSD right now as we're talking, so yeah, technically, even though it's not exactly back to normal colors, you'll at least have some LSD colors. So yeah, the final myth is definitely confirmed. You can end up bringing the color back to Ascension with the eye candy gobblegum. It's not necessarily the best and most practical, but it's better than nothing. Myth, does the DSR do more damage than the L96A1? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 of today's episode is going to be submitted in by JJ Lipscomb. So JJ, what I am going to be doing for you, my friend, is that while we have some background gameplay going on, I'm going to be referring to stuff from the Call of Duty wiki and talking about it while the gameplay is taking place. So let's first talk about the L96. So the L96, for those of you guys that didn't play Black Ops 1, was one of the sniper rifles in that game. The L96 was at least semi-usable. It was definitely a very powerful weapon, but the sniping in Black Ops 1 was very, very difficult to do, just from the nature of how that game was patched. When it comes to the L96A1, according to the stats here that you can find on the Call of Duty wiki, the base L96A1, when it's not pack-a-punched, does 500 damage. When it is pack-a-punched and becomes the L115 Isolator, that ends up getting 1,000 damage. Now let's switch over to Black Ops 2 and take a look at the DSR stats. So when it comes to the DSR in Black Ops 2, these are the stats on the Call of Duty wiki once again. So when it comes to the DSR, the unpack-a-punch version will actually end up having its damage range a little bit. It looks like that according to the wiki, it can be anywhere from 800 to 550. But when it's pack-a-punched, it's also 1,000, just like the L96. Now, even though both sniper rifles will equal out by the time that they're pack-a-punched, at least in their base form, the DSR wins in this case because the range can end up being anywhere from 550 to 800. So at least talking about the base damage, the DSR wins, which means that this myth is confirmed. The DSR does do more damage than the L96, although it really doesn't matter at the end of the day if you intend to pack-a-punch these guns. Myth. While doing the pack-a-punch defense in Garad Krovi, can you use anywhere but here to escape the house and go back to the main map? Alrighty guys, so Myth 2 is going to be submitted in by Tyler, so what we're going to have happen is that Dan is going to have anywhere but here in his inventory after we have commenced the lockdown while in the Pack-a-Punch room on Garad Krovi, and I'm just going to be just staring at him just so I can show you guys if whether or not he does indeed move to a different location outside this room. So when he pops it, so far he's only gone downstairs, but remember the Gobblegum is random, it could just end up being bad luck. So Dan is going to use his second attempt, because it does have more than one use, and see if whether or not he teleports to somewhere else back on the main map. So here he goes, and once again, he does not teleport back to the main map, he only will teleport within this room so far. So I'm going to say that the myth is busted for now at least, because even after doing a quick Google search just to be 100% sure, I was not able to find anything saying you could leave unless you end up doing the lockdown the official way, so I'm going to leave it at busted for now. Myth. Can you stab a zombie to death with just a combat knife in World at War on round 10? Alrighty guys, so this is a myth that is created by the Mythbusters team because we wanted to see if whether or not that you could end up doing something like this, because World at War is extremely glitchy, and as you guys can see, this is the reason why. Every time Dan goes to stab a zombie, it does what we call hugging. The zombie essentially traps Dan in a hitting animation that he cannot escape every time that he ends up stabbing it. And we're also talking about the combat knife here, not the Bowie knife, the base combat knife you spawn in with. Now, even though the combat knife is extremely weak at this point in the game, you can do it legitimately. It's just that you are at massive risk of dying without Jug, even with Jug, might I add. So the myth is confirmed, but I never recommend that you try this. Myth. Can you stun a denizen with an EMP grenade on transit? Alrighty guys, so Myth 4 is going to be submitted in by Dan. So while on transit here, I'm going to purposely run into the fog and get a denizen to jump on top of me. At that point, what I'm going to do is right before he jumps on me, I'm going to chuck a EMP grenade straight up into the air, so that way it will land back on my head by the time that the denizen is in the melee animation on me. Therefore making it so that way I get a direct hit and I don't have anything else hitting it other than the EMP grenade. So here I go. I'm going to chuck it into the air, and a denizen is about to land on my head. And after the flash, he just kept going. So it's busted. The denizen doesn't get affected by this thing. There's really nothing you can do other than just melee it like we've done for years. But yeah, it was at least worth a shot. But who runs EMP grenades on transit anyways? Let's just be honest. Alrighty guys, so now we're moving on to the big bad final myth of today's episode, and once again, the title is not deceiving you. We are going to be literally testing if we can launch Leroy into the sky with the trample steam on Buried. This is something that I just am easily enthused about. I'm very interested in, and I'm just wanting to see something stupid. So let's end up playing Black Ops 2 and see if this can happen. Myth. Can you launch Leroy with a trample steam on Buried? Alrighty guys, so this is once again going to be another myth that is submitted in by the Mythbusters team. So I have got the trample steam built, and now I'm going to set Leroy free here in a second. What I'm basically going to do is that I'm going to try to lure him in a really tight and narrow hallway just outside of his jail cell, and I'm going to entice him with booze so that way he keeps following me, and just hope that he will inevitably land on the trample steam since it's such a tight corridor. Alrighty, so I'm at my desired location, and I'm just going to get Leroy to line up with it so that way there is no risk of him possibly missing, and then I'm going to see if whether or not he glitches, launches properly, or just nothing happens at all. So Leroy, what will happen to you, buddy? And... aw, damn it. Aw, that's a letdown. Nothing happens. You guys can even see his foot standing right on the trample steam. He just doesn't end up doing anything. God damn it. And the thing is, it's not like it's in a spot that I can't reach. It does affect me. So it just doesn't affect Leroy specifically. Oh, that's a letdown. Okay, so the final myth is busted, but god damn it, that would have been really cool. Myth. Are there smiley faces inside of the prisoner zombies in Mob of the Dead? Alrighty guys, so let's start off this episode with a banger myth, one that could have easily been the final myth, but we're going to have it at the beginning of the episode instead. So as our game is starting, I am letting the zombies approach the windows and getting into the spawn. I am specifically waiting for the prisoner zombie once again because this is the zombie that we have to check for this myth to end up taking place. And once I am able to end up killing a prisoner zombie, I will then no-clip into the map a little bit so that way I can end up being at level with the body so that way I can be able to look inside of them properly. God, that sounds wrong. And then I'm going to see if whether or not I can find a smiley face. Okay, so I'm turning on no clip with console commands. I'm going to take a look inside the body. And yeah, there indeed is a smiley face inside of the prisoner zombies. I don't know why this is here, but it's an interesting little Easter egg, I guess. So that means that myth number 1 is confirmed. There is indeed smiley faces inside the prisoner zombies in Mob of the Dead. Really cool attention to detail and shows you why Mob of the Dead is one of the best maps in the entire series. Speaking of Mob of the Dead, myth. Does the M1911 cycle through the mystery box in Mob of the Dead? Alrighty guys, so let's head over to the cafeteria and end up hitting the mystery box. Even though you can't end up getting the M1911 outside of spawning with it, it is supposedly going to cycle through. And it looks like for certain frames, the M1911 does indeed flash inside the mystery box on Mob of the Dead. I don't know why it is in here, but it definitely is in here for sure, meaning that Myth 2 is confirmed. Maybe Treyarch decided to have another troll weapon in Black Ops 2 like the War Machine or the SMR, where you could possibly end up getting the M1911 again inside the mystery box. Myth. Can you open the Pack-a-Punch by placing the turbine near the AK-74U wall buy at the power station in Transit? Alrighty guys, so we are loaded up here on Transit, and when it comes to Transit, for those of you guys that are familiar with the map, you will remember how that when it comes to the Pack-a-Punch, it is located at the bank inside of town. But in order to Pack-a-Punch, you still need to place a turbine at the power station right here where this lightning bolt door is, and then the lightning bolt door that's at the bank will shortly thereafter open, allowing you to be able to Pack-a-Punch. The problem is, though, is that by ending up having to place the turbine near this lightning bolt door, it causes you to have to end up running around the entire power station to get back out and then be able to end up making it so that we get to things like the bus on time, or just be able to get back in the spot that you were at for maybe perhaps the AK-74U wall buy. So we are going to be seeing if whether or not we can make this easier on ourselves by placing the turbine instead just before this lightning bolt door at the AK-74U wall buy that is just right before you jump down into the power station. So while I get set up, Dan is going to be at town waiting on standby, so that way as soon as I end up placing the turbine down, he can check to see if the Pack-a-Punch is now open. So now that I'm done killing a few zombies so that way they will not destroy the turbine as soon as I place it, I'm going to place it right near the AK-74U wall buy and see if the turbine is strong enough to reach the lightning bolt door and therefore open up Pack-a-Punch. And it looks like that from Dan's POV, as soon as I place the turbine down, even though it's not right directly at the lightning bolt door, it does indeed open the Pack-a-Punch room. It looks like that the turbine has a stronger radius than we have thought throughout all of these years, meaning that if you truly wanted to, you can end up placing the turbine at the AK-74U wall buy here and avoid having to jump down into the power station multiple different times. So that means that Myth 3 is confirmed here today, and if you wanted to save yourself some time while trying to Pack-a-Punch on Transit, you can now. Myth. While taking a launch pad in Revelations, while holding a frag grenade, will you live from the explosion? Alrighty guys, so we're loaded up into Revelations here, and I'm going to be opening one of the spawn doors so I can immediately get access to a launch pad, and then I'm going to cook a frag grenade in my hand while taking said launch pad and seeing if whether or not I'll live or die. So while in the air, the frag grenade does indeed go off, and I end up living. Unlike Dan here, who ends up doing the same thing as me, but his grenade ends up killing him because he landed just before it exploded. So believe it or not, Myth 4 is also confirmed. I believe that the reason why that this is the case is because they probably didn't want you to be able to end up dying and clipping through the map, but unless we ask Treyarch themselves, I guess we'll never know. Alrighty guys, and now we're switching over to the final myth of today's episode, and once again it is going to be, can you be able to launch George Romero with the flinger trap that is in Call of the Dead? So let's hop over to Black Ops 1 Plutonium, launch Call of the Dead, and see if we can launch George Romero. Myth. Can you launch George Romero with the flinger trap in Call of the Dead? Alrighty guys, so the final myth of today's episode is going to be submitted in by my friend Tyler. So with George Romero running around like a maniac, I'm going to very quickly open up the lighthouse so that way the flinger trap can end up being ready to be used. Alright, so I'm at the lighthouse and I have enough points, so I'm going to buy it right now. And now I'm going to make my way back over to the flinger trap, which is now good to go. And I'm going to let Dan here lure him right into it, so that way we can see if whether or not George is able to go for a ride. And without cheating, guys, let me know if you think that this myth is going to be confirmed or busted. But here we go. And when it comes to the flinger trap, it does indeed have the ability to not only launch you, but also simultaneously it can launch George here while in Call of the Dead. So, that means that the final myth of today's episode is confirmed. George Romero can be launched by the flinger trap in Call of the Dead. So if you're trying to use the flinger trap to escape George, don't get too comfortable just quite yet, because if you turn around, he very well might be right behind you. Myth. Can you skip the extremely long forest cutscene in Black Ops 3? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 of today's episode is going to be submitted in by JJ Lipscomb, and JJ is referring to this cutscene right here. Every time you die in Black Ops 3, there is a cutscene of a forest, and it's slower than 2 elderly turtles having intercourse, so the way that we're going to try to fix this issue is by simply just deleting the video file that is in Black Ops 3. Now once you delete this file from your copy of the game, when you boot it up next and you die, this is instead what will happen. Each time you now die in Black Ops 3, instead of being met with that forest cutscene, you will instead get this, which is something I'm pretty sure a lot of people are used to, which is going to end up being this checkerboard design that you end up getting on your screen, where it's looking for an asset of some kind and just can't find it because it's not working. And then just in a few seconds, you will go back to the main menu. So myth 1 is confirmed. If you don't mind playing on PC Black Ops 3 and deleting some of your game files, you can get this forest cutscene to stop playing and be able to get back to the lobby quicker. Myth. If you bleed out in Afterlife mode when you spawn in on Mob of the Dead, will you get a different game over ending? So in Mob of the Dead, there's multiple different ending cutscenes of sorts. You can end up getting this one, which is the most common, where you just survive as long as you can, and it just shows a showcase of the prison. There's also the Easter egg endings, where you either break or continue the cycle. However, though, what happens if you just let yourself die within the spawn? Because nobody does this by default unless they're just that ungodly bad, or if they're trying to do it on purpose. So, what exactly takes place? Is there a different ending of some kind? So as soon as I load into my game, I just did not move, and this is what happens when you bleed out in Afterlife in the spawn. So it looks like that upon dying, you will end up getting Samantha's Lullaby to play in the background while the game will pan you over to the moon, implying that there is a third and hidden cycle, which is going to be the Accept the Cycle ending, which is going to be different than the normal Easter egg ending where you either continue or break the cycle. This is basically implying that within the storyline, the prisoners just accept their fate and they just decide to die, which if that is the case, then this is a really cool attention to detail, and that gives us a third alternative option now when playing Mob of the Dead. So that means that Myth 2 is also confirmed. You can end up getting a third and secret ending if you end up just not spawning in on Mob of the Dead. Myth. Can you find Dempsey 1.0 as a moving dot in the sky in DugTyler? Alrighty guys, so just to give some clarification for the myth, for those of you guys that don't know how the Easter egg works in DugTyler, let me explain. In DugTyler, the premise is to get the soul of Dempsey 1.0. In order to do this, you have to get his little pod that he's using for his cryo-freeze slumber to land within the map. This asset is going to spawn in within the game within the first roughly 60 seconds of booting up into the spawn. And you can find this asset by looking at this moving pixel within the sky with a sniper rifle scope. Or, if you also want to, you can no-clip and follow this asset as it moves around the map. This is Dempsey 1.0's cryopod waiting in the sky in the hopes that the player will attempt the Easter egg and get to the part where you can end up landing him back into the map. So Myth 3 is confirmed as well, and the fact that we have played Black Ops 3 so much to the point where we're now noticing a single pixel difference within the sky, either we're just dorks or Black Ops 3 is just that good, or the newer Call of Duties just suck that bad we're desperate to get any content we can out of the older games. It's one of those three. It's probably a healthy mixture, but I just find this hilarious how we notice these tiny little attentions and details. Myth. In Die Rise, do soldier zombies have more health than the common zombies? Alrighty guys, so Myth 4 submitted in by Ace of Spades. Now, this is a common zombie in Die Rise. And then over here behind me, this is going to end up being a armored zombie within Die Rise. And the best way, in my opinion, to see if they have more health than a common zombie is to stab them on round 1. So stabbing a common zombie is one hit to kill, but stabbing a armored zombie is actually not. In order to stab a armored zombie, you have to do it twice. So that means that, yes, the armored zombies in Die Rise, they actually have more health than a common zombie, which means the myth is confirmed. So if you see those zombies with the slight armor padding on their character model, be very careful around them, because if you underestimate them, they will end up killing you. Alrighty guys, but now we are moving on to the final myth of today's episode, and once again is going to be, if you end up shooting a monkey with the baby gun while you're in Shangri-La, what happens exactly to the monkey? Does it shrink it? Does it kill it? Does it do something else? I don't know, but we're going to be going over to the final myth now and seeing what happens. Hopefully it will end up being something cool. Myth. In Shangri-La, can you shrink a monkey with the baby gun? Alrighty guys, so the final myth of today's episode is submitted in by my boy, DugTyler. So I'm playing the Black Ops 3 version of Shangri-La, so I can use my Amethyst mod menu and just spawn in a baby gun, so that way I can be able to shoot one of the monkeys that you first see when you are inside the spawn. And I finally found the prompt to spawn the baby gun into my inventory, so now let's go over to this monkey that is right over here in the corner and shoot him and see what happens. So monkey, what do you do? Well, apparently what you do is you die. Yeah, unless you want to say that the monkey shrunk to the molecular level and I can't see him, then yeah, this monkey is dead. It's not shrunk. So yeah, I'm going to say it's safe to say that the final myth is busted, because unless somebody wants to spend another few years trying to look around for a single pixel difference like how they did on Horizon Drac, I'm pretty sure that the monkey's not there anymore. Myth. In Cold War, can you rebuild barriers faster with Speed Cola? Alrighty guys, so Myth 1 is going to be submitted in by Dr. Zed, aka Dan, and Dan wants to know, can you end up rebuilding barriers faster with Speed Cola in Black Ops Cold War? And the short answer is, yes you can. If you rank Speed Cola all the way up to level 4, you will see that it says that you can repair barriers faster when it is activated. Really quickly here, you're going to see a side-by-side comparison where I'm using Speed Cola to repair the barrier on the main screen, and without it on the upper left. So Dan, that means your myth is confirmed. Yes, Speed Cola will allow you to repair barriers faster in Black Ops Cold War. Myth. If you throw a grenade at a monkey, will it throw it back at you? Alrighty guys, so here I am in Shangri-La on Black Ops 1. Now, the monkeys here are immediately going to be in the spawn with me. I am here shortly going to throw a grenade at this monkey and see if whether or not that he will throw it back at me. So here we go, the monkey is just minding his own business. But apparently I bonked him in the head and now he is dead. So a stationary monkey does not work. So I thought, hey, let's try it with ones that are trying to steal my drops. So there is a nuke in front of me here. I'm just waiting for a monkey to notice it and pick it up. Unfortunately, I was starting to get surrounded by zombies here, but luckily I did manage to throw a grenade at relatively close to the monkey because it actually ended up killing him. So the monkey just chose not to throw it back at me and focus more on the drop. So then I thought, okay, maybe I just have to find a monkey that's not doing anything and just throw it at those types of monkeys. And I thought I got it right here, but unfortunately if you rewind the footage in slow motion, you will see that in reality what happened was that Tyler just threw his own frag grenade towards me, which made me think it was the monkey doing it. So I decided to look this up just to see if anybody else could do it, and I did find this video right here. This is from a fellow zombies YouTuber called Greg FPS, and you guys can see that in his footage, when he throws a frag grenade at a monkey on Ascension when they're trying to steal his perks, they indeed throw it back right at him. In fact, it actually makes it where even though he has PhD, he's still receiving explosive damage, which I think is funny. So the myth is confirmed, it's just that we were not able to end up getting lucky enough to get our own footage, but Greg, I hope you don't mind if I credit you. Myth. Are multiple HVK wall buys using the wrong chalk outlines? So apparently multiple wall buys in a lot of the Black Ops 3 maps for the HVK assault rifle are using the wrong chalk outlines. This is one supposedly right here on Revelations, and it looks like a Vesper. But when you go to read it, it says purchase the HVK. And so maybe this is just a text error, but when you actually go to pick up this wall buy in particular, it is indeed a HVK. So I thought, okay, maybe this is just a glitch on one map in particular. Maybe this is just only a problem in Revelation. So I decided to load up another map, but when I go over to another map, it once again has the same issue. On Garad Krovi, the Vesper is once again the HVK. I even found a wall buy that looks like it's a Shiva, I think, and this one also says that's the HVK. Like, you can even literally see how the gun model doesn't fit in the chalk outline. And you wanna know what's funny? I discovered this from when I was researching this myth, is that apparently the HVK is messed up on every single map other than the Chronicles remakes. Shadows of Evil, The Giant, Dorizen Drak, Zetsubo no Shima, Garad Krovi, and Revelations all have a incorrect outline for the HVK, and it's either the Vesper, the Shiva, or just some other random gun. So this means that Myth 3 is confirmed. Apparently the HVK just happens to have a messed up chalk outline for a decent portion of Black Ops 3 Zombies maps. It's a pretty big goof, but it's a lighthearted goof, and plus also it can be kind of funny at times. Causes you to think quick on your feet. Myth. Can you one-shot an elite zombie with PhD slider if you jump off the giant scaffolding on the Outbreak map Duga? Alrighty guys, so Myth 4 is going to be submitted in by Tyler. So we are loading up into Duga here on Outbreak Zombies. And we're going to be going over to these things, which is going to end up being the giant scaffolding that Tyler refers to in the map. So after 45 minutes of playing Outbreak and finally getting the RNG we need to get to this location, I am now going to use PhD slider to climb up to the top of this thing and jump down onto an elite zombie and see if I can kill him. Alright, so here I am at the top of the scaffolding, and Tyler is training an elite zombie below. This way we can control where he is, and that way I can line up with him. As soon as Tyler ends up getting him in just the right spot, I'm going to jump off and try to hit him, so here we go. And when I land right next to the elite zombie, or in this case more specifically the Mangler, he does not die remotely in one shot. So we decided to switch and have me train him, and Tyler did the same thing that I did, but when he lands on top of the Mangler, once again, nothing ends up happening. Sure, he ends up losing just a tiny bit of his health, but it's not even remotely close to a one-shot. So unfortunately that means that we're going to have to say that Myth 4 is busted. You can't one-shot an elite, but if you had the patience and you were just really bored, you could definitely kill him over time. Alrighty guys, so now we're moving on to the final myth of the episode, and once again is going to be, if your FPS is too high in Black Ops 2, will it not allow you to be able to fly with the Paralyzer Wonder Weapon that you can get on Buried? So I'm going to load up Black Ops 2 on my PC, crank up my FPS as high as it can go, and see if whether or not it will not allow me to fly. Myth. If your FPS is too high in Black Ops 2, will you not be able to fly with the Paralyzer? Alrighty guys, so here we are loaded into Buried, and the mystery box does indeed give me the Paralyzer, but I do want to give you guys some context for this myth first. So this myth takes inspiration from, once again, a fellow zombies YouTuber called Jolts. He has a mini-series on his channel where he talks about useless COD Zombies information, and one of these things he refers to is this exact idea. Here is a snippet from one of Jolts' videos.
And if your FPS is too high, then you can't fly with the Paralyzer.
So I'm going to try to replicate this the best I can. Now my monitor and my PC can only handle so much FPS at once, and it sometimes tends to spike depending on what I'm doing. So in Jolts' video, it looks like he had around 200 FPS, but mine dips under 200 FPS sometimes, and so my assumption is that because it's not stuck at 200 FPS the whole entire way through, that's why I'm still able to fly with the Paralyzer. However though, despite the fact that I didn't always have 200 FPS, there was times I did actually get stuck when trying to use the Paralyzer. Here is me getting stuck in the exact same location that Jolts did in his video multiple different times. Now for me, in my case, I was under 200 FPS, but I was definitely well above 60. When Black Ops 2 originally came out, it was for the Xbox 360 and the PS3, and was supposed to be capped at 60 FPS on consoles. So because the game is meant to be around 60 FPS by default, that means that the game is going to have some glitches when it's not. For example, literally the clip right before this, Jolts was showing how if your FOV is too high, Buried is unplayable. It's examples like these that show you that the older games were predominantly meant for console back in the day, unlike the newer games which are also equally just as meant for PCs. So based off of what we've seen today, I'm going to say that the final myth is confirmed, although I will just say this, is that you don't exactly stop flying altogether, you more rather just get stuck in places. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to run at a higher FPS. Already got it.
For Myth 1 today, we are going to be looking at Can You Kill Dead Denizens on Transit with a Jet Gun, submitted by yours truly. For simplicity's sake, we're going to be giving ourselves the jet gun through console commands. That way we don't have to go and fucking build it like a normal person would. We're simply just going to give ourselves the upgraded jet gun and try and kill a denizen with it. Now let's see if it kills the denizen. In 3, 2, 1? No. Let's try that again, see if it was a fluke or not. So, one more time, give it to us through console commands, and we'll see what happens. In 3, 2, 1. No, you can't kill the denizen with the jet gun. Really thought you could, but apparently not. So that's Myth 1. Myth 1 is busted, sadly. Myth. Can you use the killing time gobblegum to freeze a character using a jump pad in BO3? Submitted by DugTyler. So moving on to Myth 2, we're going to use a mod menu called the Amethyst mod menu. You can get it in the workshop. Basically, we're going to use it to give ourselves the killing time gobblegum. And then we're going to go to a jump pad and we're going to try and pop it midair. As you can see, we pop it midair, but it doesn't freeze us, which is kind of to be expected. It should only affect zombies. I wouldn't see why it would affect the player, but maybe let's try it again. Maybe it was a fluke, you know. There we go. Pop it one more time and nothing. Nothing, huh? Not surprising, but still an interesting myth nonetheless. So let's move on to the next one, shall we? Myth. If you throw a Widow's Wine grenade at a meatball in Shadows of Evil, will it launch into the air? Submitted by the myth-busting team. So for Myth 3, we're going to be throwing Widow's Wine grenades at the meatballs and see if they, pop up. This first one was a fluke, but let's try that again. And it completely disappeared. I did see it move to the right. Let's try that again. Yep, there we go. It just bounced it up. I like that. You guys know me. I love explosives and shit. But that's Myth 3 for you. Myth 3 is confirmed. Let's do that one more time just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. And yeah, it pops them up. So that's Myth 3 for you. Myth 3 is confirmed. Myth. Can you use a time bomb to lock yourself in Leroy's jail cell? Submitted by the myth-busting team. So for Myth 4, we're going to be trying to lock ourselves in Leroy's jail cell. So first, we're going to throw a bomb in there. Well, not the bomb, but the time bomb. So we can send ourselves back in time. That unique feature of Buried. And then we're going to be shooting Leroy so that he goes back into his jail cell. And then once that happens, we're going to set off the bomb. And we'll see what happens. So we're going to set off the bomb in 3, 2, 1. And it seems like it's plausible, but I think, at least from what I'm thinking, Leroy might have been in the way. Might have had to have been in a different position when we put the bomb in its place, maybe? I don't know, but as far as we know, the myth is plausible. So that's Myth 4 for you today. Myth. Can you enter the foot of the Origins robots with only your knife? Submitted by the myth-busting team. As we move on to Myth 5, we're going to be seeing if we can enter the robot in style. Basically, can we knife open its foot? We'll see what happens, and we lived. Right, we had God mode on. I forgot about that. But I'll show you example footage of what would happen. if we did it. So here's a video of what would actually happen if we did do it correctly. And video thanks to the YouTuber Divine Dividium for recording this footage. And from the looks of it, it looks like it is confirmed. We are able to enter the foot with only a knife. Thank you, Divine Dividium.
Myth. Is the drop blood money called bonus points in BO4? Alrighty guys, so here comes myth number 1. So I am playing on Origins in Black Ops 3 because Origins is the only map that I know of that this drop spawns in on Black Ops 2 and 3. But yeah, here's the drop. It looks like this, and this is what it sounds like. Now this is what the same drop sounds like in Black Ops 4. So yeah, Myth 1's definitely confirmed. For some reason, Treyarch just decided to retcon the name of this drop. But in my opinion, Blood Money just sounds cooler. Myth. Can George Romero follow you down the ice slide in Call of the Dead? Okay guys, so the second myth is submitted in by my buddy Tyler. So I've opened up the path to the ice slide on Call of the Dead just now. And now I'm going to wait for George to get his ass over here, and then I'm going to shoot him just so that way he'll be able to be enraged and then hopefully follow me down the slide. Alright, so after a few minutes of waiting, George has made his way down the staircase, and in a second here I'm about to shoot him, and now I'm going to run over to the slide so that way I can see if whether or not he'll follow me. Now personally, I have only played Call of the Dead like twice, and it was just for the sake of Mythbusting Monday, so I don't know if he will actually follow you, but let's take a look right now and see. So George, are you going to come after me? Oh, yep, he does. In fact, he actually, like, slides after you like he's surfing. That's kind of funny, actually. So yeah, Myth 2 is also confirmed. George Romero will follow you down the ice slide if you choose to lead him down that path. So just make sure that you are just looking behind you so that way he doesn't jump scare you. Myth. Can you stun an elite enemy in Cold War with the electric cherry effect of elemental pop? Alrighty guys, so Myth 3 is submitted in by my buddy Dan. Now, I'm about to buy elemental pop from the Wonder Fizz machine, and then I'm going to go over to a Mangler, which is classified as an elite enemy here in Cold War, and I'm going to reload so that way I get the electric cherry effect that you get at level 5 for this perk, and see if whether or not that this stuns the Mangler. Alright, so here is the Mangler, and I'm just basically just going to go up to him and reload, and you guys can see that purple lightning that comes out of my character, but it really doesn't look like it affects the Mangler all too much. Pretty much as soon as I activate it, I'm immediately getting hit. So it really doesn't look like it does anything. In fact, that time I was looking directly at the Mangler, and it doesn't do anything. In fact, it did so little to help me that when I got this close to the Mangler, he ended up killing me. And I've come to the conclusion that this perk really doesn't help you specifically with elite enemies. So I'm going to say that the third myth is busted because, at least for the enemies that we tested it on, there was basically no benefit. Myth. Can you enter the Origins robots with just grenades? Alrighty guys, so the fourth myth of today's episode is submitted in by Ace of Spades. And Ace of Spades, thank you for commenting, it's good to see you around here again. So I am going to be trying to get into the Origins robots with just my grenades. So I'm specifically going to be using frag grenades, so that way I can be able to time them, because with Widow's Wine grenades and Semtexes, those ones go off on their own, and it's much more harder to time when the robot is only going to be available at certain instances. So after waiting for the right timing to find an Origins robot where the foot is in our area, I'm now going to cook a grenade and see if I can time it. When I throw it, it looks like I actually do manage to get in. Yeah, in fact I do. I'm in the foot right now, and I'm actually able to collect the Windstaff part. So yeah, you can do this. In fact, there's a variety of ways you can get into the Origins robot foots. All you really need to do is just be good with timing, and specifically in the grenades case, it was the explosion that let us in, so you just need to make sure that's within the blast radius of the foot. So yeah, Myth 4 is confirmed. You can enter into a Origins robot if you just use grenades, but I was kind of expecting that since given that last week we were able to do it with just a combat knife, which for those of you guys that have not checked out that episode, I will link it down below in the description and have a annotation at the end of the video. Alrighty guys, so now we are moving on to the last myth of the episode, and once again it is going to be, can you be able to kill the witches in Buried if you use the PhD permaperk? Is the explosion able to do damage to the witches, or can you only be able to kill her with, like, let's say bullets or something? So let's move over to Buried on Black Ops 2 and see if whether or not that this myth is confirmed or busted. Myth. Can you kill the Buried witches with PhD flopper? Alrighty guys, so for the last myth of the episode, we are now on Buried. So I am waiting for my buddy Dan to get over here to the haunted house because he's the one with PhD, and I'm going to be just protecting him / trying to keep a witch still in place, so that way he has the opportunity and the space to work with, so that way he can be able to dolphin dive and create an explosion. So this is the plan. So I'm going to have Dan try to jump off of this staircase specifically because this gives him enough height for an explosion while I stand there with a witch in place. I'm going to have God mode on so that way I can't die, and then Dan's just going to kill the other witches that spawn in if they are behind him. Alright, so here we go. So I'm jumping into the house now, and immediately witches are spawning in, and I'm purposely going to lure her just right outside of double tap, and Dan's going to start dolphin diving here any second now. Now when Dan does start to dolphin dive at the witch, the initial explosion looks like it doesn't necessarily reach her. So he keeps trying again and again. In fact, I was thinking that maybe that he wasn't able to get her because of the fact that she was just outside the blast radius, so I brought her just a bit closer. But now he's starting to actually be in range and hit her with his explosions. And it just looks like that the witches don't get affected by explosions. It seems that they're only getting affected by specifically bullets. Because I have had Dan jump on this witch like almost 10 times now, or just about, and the witch is still alive, and these witches don't have a lot of health. You can kill them pretty easily with even the weakest of bullet guns. And you want to know what's funny? Normal frag grenades can actually kill the witch, but PhD cannot. I am fairly certain the reason why PhD cannot kill the witches, and yet something like the frag grenades can, is because Treyarch was not counting on the players doing this, like we are right now, and was just expecting you to only use bullet guns or grenades if you happen to run out of ammo. So that means that the final myth is actually busted. You cannot kill the witches with PhD, Flopper, and Buried, but you really should be able to. I mean, let's be honest, it does make sense, because, I mean, it literally is a goddamn explosive after all, but apparently it's only up to the frag grenade to save you.
Can you walk around the inside of the Origins robots, other than their heads with no clip, submitted by Globursco? So as you can see, as stated in the first myth, we're just going to be using no clip and going to see if we can stand in the Origins robots, and from the looks of it, it looks like it might be busted at first, but I did find an oddity actually. So you might see here that we can't stand in the torso or even probably the head, but as I go over here, you can sort of stand on their foot, which technically does count, at least in my eyes. I would say it was confirmed. I mean, yeah, I just slid off there, but as we get to a better position, I am actually able to stand on the foot. Just wait here a second and you'll see what I mean. See? I'm standing right on the foot. I even got carried by it, so I think this myth is confirmed. Myth: can you get critical kills with launchers in Cold War? Submitted by yours truly. So for myth 2 here, we're going to be seeing if we can, as stated in the myth, get critical kills with launchers. Now this first one I thought was a fluke, but as you see later down the line, it is no fluke, as I did this with several more zombies and even did it for a few rounds. And I swear each one of them could have been a fluke, but as you see, I'm aiming directly for their heads and you can see it hitting them. But I don't know, I'll let this play out, you know, see what you guys think, you know. But I personally think that this is busted, but I'll let you guys be the judges of that. But as you can see, I'm not getting any critical kills, but I think this is busted and you can't get critical kills. Myth: if Leroy is attacking zombies after having candy, will the booze help him calm down? Submitted by DugTyler. So for myth 3 here, we're going to be giving Leroy candy and then seeing if we can give him booze afterwards. And I'm going to be picking up the booze here in a second. I'm going to be running up to Leroy, and as you can see, I have no prompt. I did this twice and I got no prompt each time. I thought it was a fluke the first time, maybe I had to get closer. No. As you saw in the video, I shook my head no, and that you don't even see the prompt, which is a bit odd. You know, I figured booze would have maybe calmed him down, but I'm not the one who made this game. But sadly, this is busted. It would have been a little cool little piece of I don't know, trivia or something like that, you know, to help calm Leroy down if you wanted to get him out of that state a little bit faster, but I don't know. Sadly, it's busted. Let's move on to the next one, shall we? Myth. Can you get the ray gun and ray gun Mark II at the same time during a fire sale in Nuketown Zombies? Submitted by Zombie Gamer 4204. So for Myth 4 here, I'm not actually going to be doing the gameplay myself. I'm actually going to be using someone else's footage, and credit goes to The Relaxing End. This guy is an amazing YouTuber. I highly recommend that you go watch this guy. He's made a lot of good content over the past God knows how many years he's been on YouTube. But we're going to be seeing if you can get the ray gun and the ray gun Mark II. And this is already confirmed, but I didn't want to go get the gameplay myself because I did not want to rely on RNG hell. But as you see right here, he got the ray gun Mark II to be specific. But yes, you can get both the ray gun and ray gun Mark II during Game of Nuketown, which I think is the only map that you can get it on, but I'm not sure. I haven't played BO2 Zombies enough to know. Anyways, let's move on to the next myth. This myth is confirmed, so let's get on to the next one. For the final myth of today's video, it is, does Juggernog in World at War Zombies let you survive more than 4 hits? Submitted by the Myth-Busting team. Now, for the final myth of today's video, it is, can you survive more than 4 hits with Jug on World at War? And we're going to go back up to that zombie and see if we can survive more than 4 hits. Now, I'm going to disable God here just to make sure, you know, he does damage to me. And we survive more than 4. In fact, just with a single zombie, he can't quite down me, which is hilarious in itself. Because Verrect, or World at War Verrect Jug is coded improperly, I would say, or a bit fucked up, as it regens your health a lot quicker than it just giving you more health, which I think is hilarious. And as you'll see later down in the clip, it takes 4 zombies just to down me, and you'll see here in a few moments. So I'm picking up Jug now into Reese, and I made sure to turn off God again, and don't mind all the shiny guns. I gave myself give all guns just to get to this point, but as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It took 5 hits to down me, which means that this myth is confirmed, but Jug in World at War is a bit fucked up depending on the map. So, yeah, this myth is confirmed.
Myth. Does Stamina Up remove fall damage? Okay guys, so myth number 1 is submitted in by my buddy Dan. Now, in the older games, Stamina Up did not prevent you from taking fall damage. Anywhere from Black Ops 1, where it was introduced, all the way into Black Ops 4, you would still take fall damage no matter what, regardless if you had Stamina Up. However, with the newest entry in the series, Black Ops Cold War, Stamina Up at level 2 does prevent fall damage. Originally, it was PhD Flopper that used to give you fall damage immunity in the older games, but they decided to switch it up in Black Ops Cold War, and now it belongs to Stamina Up. So Myth 1 is confirmed. Stamina Up, at least in Black Ops Cold War, does prevent fall damage. Myth. Can you bring a zombie along for the minecart ride in Shangri-La? Alrighty guys, so Myth 2 of today's episode is going to be submitted in by my buddy Tyler. So we are playing Shangri-La in Black Ops 3, and I'm going to be spectating as Tyler takes the zombie here and tries to put him on the minecart ride, and then he's going to purchase it, and it looks like the zombie does indeed go with him, which is really funny. And Tyler was telling me, at least from his perspective, that the zombie doesn't even attack him, it just rides the minecart ride with him. So I'm assuming this is just to prevent a glitch where you can end up like falling through the map or dying in an impossible spot to be saved. So the myth means that it's not only confirmed, but it was probably an intended feature from the beginning. Myth. Can killing time freeze a player falling out of the Origins robots? Okay guys, so myth number 3 is submitted in by the Myth-Busting team. Now, we are trying to end up getting inside the Origins robot on Black Ops 3, and what we're going to have happen is that Tyler is going to end up falling out of the robot first, and when he's back on the ground, he's going to pop the killing time gobblegum. And then I, shortly thereafter, am also going to eject out of the robot while it's already active and see if whether or not it suspends me in midair, or if it just lets me fall to the ground anyway. So killing time is active at this point in the video, and it doesn't look like it stops me from falling. I immediately descend to the ground as soon as the timer starts to run out. So I am back inside the map and outside the robot, which means that the third myth is busted. Killing time does not prevent you from falling out of the robot, nor does it suspend you in midair. Myth. Can you escape the astronaut on Moon while killing time is active? Alrighty guys, so as basically a early foreshadowing of the final myth, we are going to be testing something very similar with myth 4. And once again, that is going to be, can you end up using killing time to escape the astronaut on Moon? So Tyler's going to pop killing time right as the astronaut has grabbed me to see what happens, and it looks like when he does, the astronaut actually gets stuck in a animation where he looks like he's trying to kill me, but he can't, and I can actually walk away from his body and be able to roam the map again. So you would think that based off of what you're looking at, that I have officially escaped the astronaut, and that therefore means that he can't take any of my perks. And that's what I thought too. But apparently, when killing time wears off, the effect still goes through anyways, and I lose my perk. I no longer have double tap in my inventory. So I was thinking to myself, being like, okay, so if the astronaut is still alive, he can end up still stealing your perk, but what happens if I shoot him during killing time? Am I able to kill him, or does it just go through anyway? So let's try this again, shall we? Okay, here we are loaded up into another game, and this time I have a Ray Gun Mark II as well in my inventory. And so what's going to happen is that Tyler's going to freeze the astronaut again, and I'm going to spam this Mark II right into the astronaut's head. And so I'm going for headshots, and immediately after like 2 or 3 shots, I kill and blow up the astronaut, which means that he can't steal my perks because, well, he exploded. So based off of our findings from trying this again, I would say that the 4th myth is confirmed. You just have to remember to shoot and kill the astronaut before killing time officially wears off. Speaking of the astronaut, now let's transition into the final myth of today's episode. Myth: can you melee the astronaut on Moon to death before he steals your perk? Alrighty everybody, here is the final myth. So we're jumping right back into the exact same game where we just tested myth 4, and now we're trying to get ourselves set up for this last myth. We are going to be activating the Gobblegum Sword Flay. This gives us increased melee weapon damage for a brief period of time. And Tyler, just to make sure that we cover all grounds, is also going to pop a Killjoy, which will also spawn in a insta-kill drop. And this way, when I'm being grabbed by the astronaut zombie, I am technically going to be the strongest I can be in terms of melee damage in the game. Alright, so here goes nothing. An insta-kill is popped, and I have Sword Flay, so I'm going to intentionally get grabbed. And yeah, you can kill the astronaut this way legitimately. You can even also do this with other Gobblegums such as Pop Shocks, although this one's not nearly as effective as Sword Flay and takes about like 5 melee hits, and you'll barely just survive. So as long as you have Widow's Wine, at least one melee-centric Gobblegum, and then possibly a Killjoy, although I don't necessarily know if that affects the astronaut, but at least the first two, you can kill the astronaut with a melee attack as long as you are quick enough, which means that the last myth is confirmed. You can use the melee weapons in the game to save yourself from the astronaut before you lose your perks. Myth: does Leroy prefer booze over candy? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by Dr. Zed, aka Dan, and what we're going to have happen is that me and Dan are both going to go up to Leroy, and then we're both going to slowly back away from him and see who he prioritizes. Does he prefer one or the other, or does it really not matter? Maybe it's just like who he sees first. Alright, so me and Dan are now backing up from Leroy, and it looks like that initially Leroy prefers Candy because he is going after me, and me and Dan are roughly about the same distance from Leroy. In fact, Dan actually got up right in front of Leroy and tried to get his attention, and nothing really changed. So instead of jumping to conclusions, I just decided to run around a corner where Leroy couldn't see me and just leave him with Dan, and just see if he decides to go after Dan since he's the only one that he can see. But even when I run away from Leroy, he doesn't prioritize the booze. In fact, Dan knifes him and he sprints further away from Dan and goes after me instead. So it looks like myth 1's busted. I'm pretty sure Leroy just prefers candy over booze. Now this very well could just be a fluke, but we had it where we tried multiple different methods, including just giving Leroy no choice but to consume the booze. But he eventually found his way to whoever was holding the candy. Myth: can you use anywhere but here to teleport off the lunar landers in Ascension? Alrighty guys, so myth number 2 is going to be submitted in by Lava. Now, Lava also wants to know that if this does work, does this contribute towards unlocking Pack-a-Punch on the map? Because for those of you guys that don't know, you have to ride the lunar landers to activate the Pack-a-Punch on Ascension. Here's the thing that we found out from our testing, though, is that it's not even going to be able to get that far because when you activate a lunar lander, you can't use Gobblegums. You get this red animation underneath of it showing that it will no longer work until you are off of the lunar lander. I'm trying to spam the gobble gum to see if I can find a frame where I can get it to work, but it unfortunately will not work until I've completely finished the lunar lander ride. So Myth 2 is busted. You cannot use any orbit here on the lunar landers, and this also therefore means that you can't get off of them early to try to cheese the Pack-a-Punch. Myth: can you use killing time to survive the Drages rocket test? Alrighty guys, so myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by my buddy Tyler. Now what we're going to have happen is that me and Dan are going to be spectating what happens with God mode on, and Tyler is going to try to pop killing time just right before the rocket test officially ends up taking place. He's then going to see if before time runs out if he can take the launch pad back to the spawn and technically be able to defy death and be able to escape the rocket test. So the rocket test is now starting to take place. Tyler is going to pop killing time roughly about 4 to 3 seconds right before the countdown reaches 0. But it looks like that even though the rocket does freeze, it still kills Tyler anyway, because it looks like that killing time cannot stop the animation. So it looks like that myth 3 is busted. It seems that killing time doesn't affect the rocket launch on DugTyler. It's one of the only few things I have found thus far that does not get frozen by that gobblegum. It seems to make an exception here. Myth: can you save yourself from falling off the spawn and buried with the paralyzer? Alrighty guys, myth 4 is submitted in by Ace of Spades. So what's going to happen here is that Dan is going to be using the upgraded paralyzer called the Petrifier, and he is going to use it to get back into the spawn of buried, where the M14 and the Olympia are. He is then going to jump into the giant crater that you can see in the spawn and see if he can bring himself back up into spawn with the paralyzer's flying feature. Now it looks like that when Dan initially falls off, the paralyzer doesn't save him. He just falls out of the map and he hits what would have been the equivalent of a death barrier. Now the weird thing is though is that if he jumps and then does this, he can sort of fly out of the map and then quickly get back to the spawn if he's not too far away. The thing is though is that I can't explain why that this takes place. So if Dan falls and then activates the paralyzer, he can't save himself. If he jumps and then he activates the paralyzer, he could debatably save himself. Because if you compare this, where he's falling right after he jumps, and then you compare it to something like this, where he's flying plenty high and plenty far out, and he even gets back into the map in time well before that the paralyzer starts to overheat, I want to say that this myth is at least plausible. I originally thought it was going to end up being busted because, well, technically, in my mind, what I think as falling out of the map and saving yourself is that you slip and then you activate the paralyzer. But you very well could accidentally jump out of the map and then quickly save yourself. You don't necessarily have to be already descending before you activate the paralyzer. You could be already slightly in the air. So I'm going to be a little bit more lenient and just say plausible instead of completely busted. Alrighty guys, but now we're moving on to the final myth of the episode, and once again is going to be, can the astronaut on Moon respawn you if you have died and bring you back into the map? This is a very unique myth, and you'll see what I'm kind of getting at here when we get into the actual gameplay. But actions speak louder than words, so enough with my talking, let's get into the final myth. Myth: can the astronaut on Moon respawn you back into the map if you die? Alrighty guys, so the last myth of the episode is going to be submitted in by FaderCat3169. So what's going to happen here is that we're going to use killing time once again on the astronaut. What we found out in last week's episode is that if you use killing time right as the astronaut is grabbing you, while killing time is active, you can escape from him and he won't take your perk. But if you don't kill him before it wears off, he will still teleport you and steal the perk anyway. So if that is the case, if we do that again, but we decide to jump off the map before the killing time wears off, does that mean that if killing time wears off, it will respawn us back into the map as long as the astronaut zombie is still alive? So now with the setup process being explained, let's test the final myth. Okay, so Tyler is about to activate killing time right as the astronaut grabs me here. And it looks like that he does do it successfully, and so now I'm going to immediately jump off the map and technically die. Now it's just a waiting game. We just have to wait for killing time to wear off and just hope and pray that the game decides that, hey, you know, I got grabbed successfully by the astronaut. Is it going to put me back into the map even though I'm technically dead? So it's a matter of time now, guys. And it looks like that things are moving again, but I am unfortunately still dead, which therefore means the final myth is busted. If you have died, you're not going to respawn back into the game. The game does not think that far ahead, and I don't think that they would allow you to do this anyways, because technically this would make it where you could never die then. But yeah, myth. Can Nova Crawler gas kill zombies? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by Cone. Now, the way that I'm going to test this myth is that while the zombies and the Nova Crawlers are on extremely low HP due to my Amethyst mod, I'm going to train up a horde and then shoot the Nova Crawler with my M1911. So that way when he explodes, the gas will emit out of his corpse, and then I'm going to lead the zombies into said gas so that way I can see if whether or not that it will kill them. Okay, so I believe I've hoarded up a decent amount of zombies and I have a Nova Crawler here. So I'm going to shoot the Nova Crawler now and get the gas to come out of his body. Now, as I am walking away and the gas starts to emit, you will see once my vision comes back that there is significantly less zombies and their bodies are stacked up on the ground. So believe it or not, myth 1's confirmed. Yeah, Nova Crawler gas can indeed kill zombies. It's just that they have to be extremely low HP. Myth. Does the game over music change depending on where you die in Revelations? Okay guys, so myth number 2 is going to be submitted in by Dead Sled 8. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to go over to 2 different locations and die. I'm going to go over to Origins in Revelations, and then I'm going to go over to Shangri-La. So here's the music for dying in Origins. Now here's the one for Shangri-La. So my friends, that would be a yes. Myth 2 is confirmed. If you end up dying in a specific location on Revelations, you will get that map's game over music. Myth. Can killing time stop you from drowning in Zetsubo no Shima? Alrighty guys, so myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by DugTyler. So now I am in the power room of Zetsubo no Shima. I now just gave myself killing time, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my character's head underneath of the water and wait for him to start losing air. And just right before he drowns to death, I'm going to pop killing time and see if it can save me from death. Okay, so my character is now starting to get red screen, so I'm going to pop killing time right about now. And it looks like that despite me popping it, my character still drowns to death. So myth 3 is busted. Killing time does not make it where you can no longer drown in Zetsubo no Shima. You will still run out of air. Myth. In Shadows of Evil, can you turn around 180 degrees and wall ride back where you came from without landing on the ground? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 submitted in by the myth busting team. So I am on Shadows of Evil right now and I'm in the Pack-a-Punch room. I'm going to use this little wall riding spot that you have to use to get to the Pack-a-Punch and try to see if I can do a cool 180 trick while I'm in the air technically and before I land back on the ground. Can I go from one direction to the other in one fluid motion? Alright, so here goes nothing. I'm wall riding right now, and you guys can see that when I'm trying to turn around, my character kind of like lets go of the wall texture. I'm trying to look at my character's legs to see what exactly is happening, and the game for some reason just decides to make it where if I'm turning away from the wall, it just makes my character let go. In a way, this is kind of realistic because your character would have it where the inertia that's giving them the ability to wall ride in the first place would be interrupted by doing such an abrupt turn. So this actually makes sense on why this doesn't work. So it's busted, but it was still worth giving it a try. Alrighty guys, so we're now moving on to the final myth of the episode, and once again is going to be, can the astronaut zombie on Moon teleport you from Area 51 back to the Moon if you use the killing time gobblegum? So let's transition back over to Black Ops 3, give ourselves killing time, wait for the astronaut, and see what happens. Myth. Can the astronaut zombie on Moon teleport you from Area 51 back to the Moon? Alrighty guys, so the last myth of today's episode is submitted in by Lava. So while I am here on Moon, I am going to let the astronaut grab me, and just right before I'm going to pop Killing Time. Based off of what we have learned from the last 2 episodes with the astronaut, if you pop Killing Time just as he's grabbing you, you can actually walk away from the astronaut. But if you don't kill him before time runs out, he will still teleport you and steal your perk as if he grabbed you without Killing Time. So, with that being explained, does that mean that if I take the teleporter back to Area 51 while Killing Time has frozen the astronaut on the Moon, will he be able to teleport me back when Killing Time expires? Well, let's test that theory, shall we? So I'm going to let the astronaut grab me, and I just pop Killing Time now. So now I'm going to run all the way back over to the teleporter and let it send me back down to the Earth. So I was able to teleport back to the Earth successfully, and you guys can see that Killing Time is still yet to run out. So I only got a few more seconds here left on the Earth before this Gobblegum expires. So am I going to be sent back? Let's wait and see. And no, actually. I am still stuck here on the Earth. The astronaut doesn't have power over whether or not I can be moved anymore. So that's a really cool discovery. Apparently, when you're on the Earth, the astronaut can't move you anymore. I guess that the game, for some reason, just doesn't declare the Earth the same thing as the Moon, and maybe in the code it, like, regulates it as, like, 2 separate maps or something, so maybe it can't find the player. And also, just in case you guys were wondering, if I do go back to the Moon, I don't end up getting teleported either. I can just still walk around per normal. So that means that the final myth is busted. The astronaut can't move you if you've gone back to the Earth. He can only move you when Killing Time expires if you still stay on the Moon. Myth. Does Juggernog let you last longer in frozen water in Call of the Dead? Alrighty guys, myth number 1 is going to be submitted by Ace of Spades. So what's going to happen here is that Dan is going to purchase Juggernog.
Hi, how are you?
And then both of us are going to jump in some frozen water. Upon both of us jumping in some frozen water, we're just going to see who lasts longer before they get completely frozen, either Dan or me. Now, I am going to fast forward this part just a bit because it is definitely a little slow for my liking, but despite the fact that it's kind of hard to see because of the effect on my screen, you guys can see that Dan ends up getting frozen at the exact same time as me. So it doesn't matter if you have Juggernog or not, you'll still be frozen at the same time as all other players. So myth 1 is busted. Juggernog does not make it where you can survive longer in frozen water. It's the same for everybody. Myth. In Zetsubo no Shima, can you use rainbow water to fill the temporary generators? Alrighty guys, so myth number 2 is submitted in by Dead Sled 8. Now, in order to end up getting rainbow water in the very first place for Zetsubo no Shima, you have to do the following method. Via the fast travel system in Zetsubo no Shima, if you end up taking it and see these element 115 rocks that are the color blue inside this tube and hit your interact key, you will get rainbow water. And for those that have never played Zetsubo no Shima, the power system is a very complicated one, to say the least. You have temporary power until you can get permanent power. And the temporary power is activated by bringing water to these specific stations that are on your screen. And so in order to power them up, you normally need blue water, but can you do it with rainbow water? Unfortunately, no. It doesn't let you. There is no hit scan for it, and the game just ignores your rainbow-colored water. So myth 2 is busted. Rainbow water cannot turn on the temporary power in Zetsubo no Shima. And I would also just like to add here really quickly at the end is that this wouldn't have worked in a legit game anyways, because in order to get rainbow water, you have to already have the power on by default. So if you have the power on by default, the temporary power at that point is null and void. Myth. Can you use Killing Time to avoid the lockdown in Garad Krovi? Alrighty guys, so myth number 3 is submitted in by Weebmatic. Now, we are going to head down to the Pack-a-Punch location in Garad Krovi and start the lockdown. Now, with the lockdown, you cannot leave by any ordinary means. But if we freeze time with the Killing Time Gobblegum, can we technically get out before it officially commences, therefore cheesing the system? And just to make sure that there's zero confusion, the whole entire area is open at the moment, and this is actually going to be the exit that we're going to try to take when we're starting this myth. Alright, so Dan's going to pop his Killing Time Gobblegum, and then we're going to hit the button to commence the lockdown. So at the moment, time is frozen, and we have activated the lockdown. Now this is the interesting thing, is that the door to the hatch to escape is now locked, even though technically time is frozen still. The windows are still open, but the hatch door is locked. So in other words, technically killing time has an exception here. Treyarch makes it where this one specific door will still shut anyways, so you can't cheese the lockdown system. And now you guys can see that when killing time wears off, the lockdown commences as normal. So Myth 3 is busted. You cannot use killing time to cheese the lockdown system in Garage Krovi. The one door that leads to your escape will still lock anyways, and the only way you can actually escape is if you no-clip back through the door. Myth: if a Thrasher eats a down player, does using Phoenix Up kill the Thrasher? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 is submitted in by Lava. So Dan here has now downed in front of the Thrasher, and as soon as the Thrasher realizes what's happened, it's going to pick him up and eat him, and now Dan is inside of its stomach. So I'm going to get at a safe distance, and then I'm going to pop my Phoenix Up Gobblegum and see if I can rescue him. So ladies and gentlemen, the verdict is... yes, the myth is confirmed. Phoenix Up can save your teammate if they are eaten by a Thrasher. And this also means that if they do end up losing their perks, they will also get them back. Alrighty guys, final myth time. So the final myth, once again, is going to be, can you spawn in secret weapons or cut weapons in World at War Zombies? And I just want to mention something just really quickly here, is that even though the wording of the myth is not the exact same in the actual Discord message as it is in the title, I will explain my reasoning why and tell you guys what I slightly changed. But other than pointing that one little thing out, let's now move on to the final myth of the episode. Myth: can you spawn in secret or cut guns in World at War Zombies? Alrighty guys, now it's time for the final myth. Now here is the original myth in its original wording. This myth is submitted in by my friend Tyler, and he wants to know if you can specifically spawn back in the cut Mosin Nagant sniper rifle. The only thing that I'm going to slightly change about this myth is not going to end up being a big deal, because all I'm doing is just going a little bit above and beyond. Instead of just trying to spawn in specifically the Mosin Nagant, I just thought, hey, why not try to spawn in multiple secret or cut guns in World at War? Now, some of these are easy to put back into the game. All you gotta do is just use the developer console and type in give all, and you can get some of the weapons that you've probably seen in multiplayer, which is the zombie hands called brains, and then also the default weapon, which is this guy using the finger guns. Now, there is some weapons that are harder to spawn back into the game, such as specifically what Tyler is asking for, which is the Mosin Nagant. Now, via just a quick Google search, you can find this on the wiki, and if you want to see gameplay, you can even find some videos on YouTube of people using the Mosin Nagant. Here's the problem, though, that me and Dan ran into when trying to specifically spawn in certain weapons like the Mosin Nagant, and even some other ones like the Type 99 and the Springfield, is that these weapons can only be put back into the game if you modify the game itself. Now, as much as I would love to say that I am a master of computers and know how to do this, I do not. And I don't want to brick my game or do something stupid by just trying to modify files that I don't understand, so I'm not even going to bother to try to attempt this. But I will say is specifically the Mosin Nagant part about this myth is definitely feasible and therefore plausible. All of these weapons are plausible. I'm just not labeling this as confirmed is because technically you're not supposed to be able to get some of these weapons without going to extreme means, such as literally modifying the game itself. If you want to spawn in some of the harder guns, like specifically the Mosin Nagant, go right ahead. I just recommend that you be careful is all. Myth: is it possible on Verrucht that players can spawn in on either side of the spawn doors? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is submitted in by Toyo Melon 667. Now guys, this myth may sound pretty straightforward to anyone that has played Verrucht before, but if you have not, let me explain. In Verrucht, when you're playing on co-op, if you spawn in, you have a random 50-50 chance to spawn on a side with Juggernaut or Quick Revive, and the other player vice versa. But here's the problem we were running into, is that when me and Dan were playing, for some odd reason, me and him were ending up in the same side of the spawn, meaning that we were not being separated like we initially thought we were supposed to be. And this was the case for multiple different times we reloaded the map, so we were like, okay, maybe this is a feature only in either the Black Ops 1 or the World at War version, so we went over to those. Alright, so now here's the Black Ops 1 version, and just like the Black Ops 3 version, me and Dan end up on the same side. And then finally, we tested World at War, the original birthplace of Verrucht. So if anything, this mechanic should be at least in this version. But just like Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 3, we're still in the same spawn room. And this happened again and again and again. We could not separate ourselves. I even went as far as to load up Verrucht on console and do this with split screen on both Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 3 to see if anything was different, and it still led to the same problem. I felt like I was experiencing the Mandela effect firsthand, because I remember this being a feature, and I felt like I was losing my mind. And then I decided to go to a little known friend of mine called Google, and I finally figured out what was going on. Via looking at a Q&A section on the Plutonium website, I was able to find this right here. This is a player saying that the Verrucht split spawn feature only kicks in with a 3-player minimum, which is why Dan and I ended up being on the same spot, is because we did not meet that requirement. And since we unfortunately couldn't get a third member of the Mythbusting team that owned Verrucht to play with us, I just had to borrow footage from online. So shoutouts to X1 Reaper 1X. Because without your footage, bro, I would have felt like I would have lost my mind. Wait a second, what did I just see? It's the ultimate version of Black Ninja 797! It's a canon event! So guys, not only because this is a canon event, but also because this took me way too long to explain unnecessarily, I'm going to label the myth at confirmed. Myth. Does having Electric Cherry make you immune to electric damage from the electrified door in Mob of the Dead? Alrighty guys, so myth number 2 is submitted in by DugTyler. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be heading to the Warden's office on Mob of the Dead and run to the electrified door where one of the plane parts is. Now obviously this is going to do damage to me and end up putting me in a downed state. But if I have Electric Cherry in my inventory, which gives me electricity powers, does this also make me immune to this electrified door? Alright, so I'm picking up Electric Cherry now, and let's head back to the Warden's office. So now trying to open the door with Electric Cherry, it looks like it doesn't matter. It still downs me just the same. So myth 2 is busted. Electric Cherry does not allow you to be able to open up the electrified door without turning off the power to it. Myth. Can the Pentagon Thief steal your weapon as you are drinking a perk? Alrighty guys, so myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by Lava. So me and Dan here are playing on 5 in Black Ops 1, and the Pentagon Thief is going to spawn in as soon as we switch the round. Now, Dan is going to be standing next to Mule Kick, and I'm going to be standing next to Juggernog, and whoever the Pentagon Thief attacks, that person is going to be drinking a perk in the middle of them spawning. So the Pentagon Thief is spawning in now, and you can probably put 2 and 2 together that since this is Dan's footage, it went after him. But yes, the Pentagon Thief is spawning in now, and it's going to attack Dan here shortly, so Dan's going to drink Mule Kick. And it looks like that the Pentagon Thief ends up stealing Dan's gun, because he originally had an MP5K, and now he's only got his ray gun. So myth 3 is busted, because Lava wanted to know that if drinking a perk would stop you from losing your gun, and unfortunately it does not. Myth. Can you upgrade a staff on Origins by entering the crazy place from the wrong colored portal? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 submitted in by the BC3027. Now, BC, I know that you said here in your comment that you were having a little bit of a hard time wording your myth. So, based off of my interpretation of what I read from you, I am assuming you basically just want to know that if you can upgrade your staff on Origins by just going through the wrong colored portal. Like, for example, if you were trying to upgrade the Lightning Staff, which is the one that we chose for our video, and try to go through, like, let's say, the Wind Tunnel, which is the yellow one that is by Juggernog. If this is not what your intended myth was, by the way, you can also feel free to clarify in the comments, but this is what I'm going to assume you meant. So after going through the entire upgrade process for the Lightning Staff, and doing all 3 steps except for the very last one where we have to go back into the crazy place and fill the staff up with souls, we are now at the part of the myth where we need to be. So instead of taking this portal, the purple one under Gen 5 where Stamina Up is, we're going to move the Gramophone and go through the Wind Tunnel, which is going to be the yellow portal near Juggernog, like I said at the beginning of this myth. So the question is can Dan put his staff into the pedestal and charge it to fully upgrade it if he goes through a different colored portal other than the purple one? And what looks like that Dan heads up to the podium, the answer is yes, he can. He can indeed put the Lightning Staff in for the final step and complete the upgrade process, which means myth 4 is confirmed. If you take a different colored portal for the upgrade portion at least, it does not matter. I think it only matters if you take the correct color when you're trying to just create the staff in the first place, when you're getting that stone, but I think that's the only time that requires you to go through a specific color, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, chat. Alrighty guys, so now it's time for the final myth, and once again is going to be, can you upgrade or pack-a-punch the zombie's brains hands or the default weapon, which is the finger guns in World at War, the cut weapons that we discovered in last week's episode. Can we get upgrade zombie hands or a finger gun 2.0? I don't know, let's find out. Myth. Can you pack-a-punch the cut brains or default weapon in World at War? Alrighty guys, so the final myth of the episode is submitted in by Ace of Spades. So Ace wants to know if you can pack-a-punch the brains or the default weapon in World at War Zombies. These are weapons we discovered in last week's episode, which for those of you guys that have not checked out that episode, you should check it out after this one because it was a really interesting myth. So let's try to pack-a-punch the brains hands first, and when we go up to the pack-a-punch machine, it unfortunately doesn't let us do it. There is a prompt for it, but it's just probably not in the game files. And switching over to the finger guns or the default gun, unfortunately it also does not work. It does not let you pack-a-punch it regardless of the prompt. So unfortunately the final myth is busted. You can't upgrade the zombie's brain hands or the default hands or even the finger gun, whatever you want to call them, because they're just not in the game at all. They're just meant to be developer tools. Myth. Can you get the Bowie knife on Moon without low gravity turned on? Alrighty guys, so here is myth number 1. Now I'm going to show you guys how to get the Bowie knife the legit way first, so you guys know what we're trying to do. So to get the Bowie knife the official way, you have to end up not turning on the power when you see the power switch. You have to run past it actually and go where I'm going right now. You have to go up this staircase and the Bowie knife is up there on the wall. This can only be achieved normally with low gravity on because of the way that it's positioned in the map. It's around a corner and you kind of have to jump at a weird angle to get it, but if you are persistent enough, you actually will be able to get the Bowie knife. You just have to work for it. But what happens now if we turn on the power and put normal gravity back into the map? Can you still be able to jump around the staircase corner and be able to grab the Bowie knife? So here I am trying to grab the Bowie knife right now, and you guys can see that immediately it's much harder to reach. I'm just trying to see if I can get at least one frame where I'm able to end up getting the hit scan to show up so I can be able to purchase the Bowie knife, but I'm not even able to really get to the height I need. After a few minutes I got curious and I decided to go into the Amethyst mod and enable the jetpacks from multiplayer to see if I could reach it, and immediately I was able to grab the Bowie knife. So I'm going to say that myth 1 is busted. I'm pretty sure that since the Bowie knife doesn't get purchased by most players, that Treyarch, when they originally released Moon, decided to put it just out of reach, so that way it would convince players to end up using the low gravity feature more. But anyway, let's move on to myth 2. Myth. Can the giant robot laser that reveals a hidden perk on the giant kill a player if they stand in the way? Alrighty guys, so now let's do myth 2. So for those of you guys that don't know, there is a little Easter egg on the giant where if you end up throwing monkey bombs in each one of the 3 teleporters and then take the teleporter and then go back to the spawn, you can hit a red button that will end up shooting a laser out of the giant robot that is in the map. And this will reveal a hidden perk, which is either Deadshot or Stamina Up. So I'm curious to see if whether or not that this laser will actually kill a player or if it's just a cosmetic effect. So I'm going to hit the button now, we're about to find out. Now from what we can see when the laser is hitting Tyler's character in the penis, is that we see that the character model doesn't end up reacting or flinching or anything, and therefore does not receive damage. So myth 2 is busted. It's just only to reveal a hidden perk on the giant and nothing more. Myth. Does a triple pack-a-punched red tier gun do more damage overall than a legendary tier gun with no pack-a-punch in Cold War? Alrighty guys, so myth 3 is submitted in by Tyler. So in a Cold War here on Game Machine, we are going to be having 2 different versions of the M1911. Tyler's is just going to be a normal legendary version with no attachments, no pack-a-punch, no nothing. And Dan's is going to be a red M1911 that is fully packed to pack-a-punch level number 3. So let's start with the gold M1911. So with a body shot, it looks like that it's around 900 damage, or just above at 923 for an upper mass body shot. And with the red M1911 here in a second, it looks like the damage is 420, which is kind of funny. Now these damage numbers are pretty consistent regardless of how many times I shoot the zombies or where I shoot the zombies. Their numbers are usually around the same. Now the weird thing is though is when you start to get a headshot. So with the normal legendary M1911, when I shoot a zombie in the head, you guys will see that the number is going to end up being slightly different. Now that's a given, but the weird thing is when I shoot a zombie in the head with the red M1911, For some reason, the red M1911 has a higher damage output when it's a headshot. Now, this could be for a variety of different reasons. It could be because I have dead shots. It could be because sometimes I ended up killing the zombie when I shot them in the head. It could have been the fact that they had different health pools when one zombie was slightly weaker than the other. But this was fairly consistent throughout our testing. So basically, at least from my point of view, and I did show this footage to Tyler, Dan, and Nitwit, it looks like that we've come to the conclusion that for some reason, if it's a headshot, the red M1911 will do more damage than if it's a body shot, which in that case, it's the just legendary M1911. Now keep in mind, I want to mention something really quickly here, is that in Tyler's myth, he's just asking about damage overall. And I even asked him, I was like, Tyler, do you want to look at this from the point of view of shooting the zombie in the body, or do you want to look at it from shooting them in the head? Because depending on how you look at it, you're going to get a different result here. And he said, just go for the head. So if we go with that approach, therefore that means that Myth 3 is labeled as confirmed because we're looking at it from the headshots, which technically the red M1911 did more damage in that regard. But if you look at it from a different way, I can see how that some of you may deem this as the other way around and make it busted. But since this is Tyler's myth, I'm going to go with this. Myth. In 9, can you get into the tiger cages in spawn using the elixir nowhere but there? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 is going to be submitted in my lava. So for those of you guys that are not familiar with Black Ops 4, let me explain a little bit how 9 works. On round 9, which is kind of a funny, cheeky thing that Treyarch did, there will be a tiger round. This is supposed to be like the hellhounds of this map, and basically they come out of these cages in the spawn. Now, in these cages is also poisonous gas. If a player were to go in there and down, when the tiger round ends and the poisonous gas goes away, would another player that is using the nowhere but there elixir be able to teleport to that down player, and then the both of them could just be able to be out of the map in that cage? Well, we're going to find out. So Dan is going into the cage and the round just ended, but immediately Dan gets revived and he's put outside in the spawn again, which is very interesting. Apparently, it doesn't end up allowing you to do this. It just automatically teleports you into the map and just denies you to even attempt this. So Myth 4 is busted. That was kind of anticlimactic. Alrighty guys, and now we're moving on to the final myth of the episode. And once again, is going to be, can you upgrade the Apothecant Servant in Revelations by just shooting the rocks in the sky from only the spawn room? Is that enough to be able to end up getting the upgrade for the map? Well, we're going to find out right now. Myth. Can you shoot the Apothecant Servant upgrade rocks from the spawn room in Revelations? Alrighty guys, the last myth of the episode is going to be submitted in by Dan. Now, this is going to be tricky to see at the naked eye, but I will zoom in if necessary. So, in Revelations, there is going to be these blue rocks that you can shoot with the Apothecant Servant, and when you get all 5, you can upgrade it. The only problem is that these rocks are tiny as hell, and they are blue on blue, so it's very, very hard to see. But we're going to try to attempt to do this ourselves and see if whether or not that this is true. So here is going to be our very first rock. Dan is shooting at it right now with a sniper, and once I notice it, I will zoom in for you. The tiny little rock is right there. It is right in between the Apothecant's crosshairs, and this guy is very hard to shoot. But eventually, after a few minutes of persistence, I was indeed able to hit this rock. It's hard to notice, but the pixel just disappears. Then there's this one, which is a little bit more straightforward. This is just straight in the sky right next to the blue little earth or moon or whatever this is. Then there's going to be this one that is to the left of the corruption engine that will take you to Noctur and Toten. Now the next one is going to be also to the right of the corruption engine, like how that the second one was. This one was so tiny that I couldn't even see it when I was looking at it, because I only saw just the one. And then the very last one is going to be right next to this floating island that is slightly different angle than the one that we just shot, but is still pretty much at the right of the corruption engine. And now we are going to go all the way to the gummy worm and see if whether or not we got them all, and if we can pack-a-punch the Apothecant Servant. So when we go up to the pack-a-punch, as you guys can see, all the blue rocks are in the back of it, and when I go to try to end up pack-a-punching the gun, it does indeed let me. So the pack-a-punch does indeed work for the Apothecant Servant if you shoot all the rocks from the spawn room, which means that the final myth is confirmed. If you really want to, you can upgrade the Apothecant Servant by shooting all the rocks from the spawns. Myth. Can the Megaton/Mangler blasters deal damage to other zombies? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by Nitwit. Now, we're going to be going here on D Machine over to the Megaton Zombie, and what we're going to just have happen is quite literally we're just going to let him shoot at us, and just see if that little green puddle on the ground is going to transfer over to the zombies and do damage to them. But it looks like, as I thought it would, it doesn't do anything, which means myth 1 is busted. It is just going to be a cosmetic effect on the ground, and will not affect anybody other than you. Myth. In Doris, if you turn on the power and no-clip into the Pack-a-Punch pod without using all the teleporters, is the machine usable? Alrighty guys, so myth 2 is submitted in by Lava. So I am on the Black Ops 1 version of Doris, and I'm going to turn on the power here shortly, and then I'm going to activate no-clip and see if whether or not that I can Pack-a-Punch my M1911. Is the teleporter required for me to be able to Pack-a-Punch, or does it just gatekeep Pack-a-Punch, and I can still actually use it once the power is turned on? Alright, so since I got enough money, I'm now going to no-clip towards Pack-a-Punch and see if whether or not I can still use it even with the door still closed. Alright, so now I'm inside, and now I'm just going to bring my character out of no-clip and see if I can pack my M1911. So when I bring my character back, it does indeed let me upgrade my gun, even though technically Pack-a-Punch is still closed, because power is all you need at the very minimum to be able to still use the Pack-a-Punch machine. And the Hellhounds, as you guys can see, are not able to get me, and I'm basically wall hacking. So it means that myth 2 is confirmed. If you really want to, you can do this on Doris. Myth. Are you able to fix the Die Rise spawn elevator with an elevator key? Alrighty guys, so myth 3 is going to be submitted in by Tyler. Now, for those of you guys that don't know, in Die Rise, there is actually a thing called an elevator key. It is a thing you can pick up in the map that will allow you to be able to make the elevators in the map move to the locations you wish, rather than them being completely random. But Tyler wants to know, can you specifically use it on the spawn elevator, the one that you would end up taking, so that way you can not only A, get down to the map quicker, but also 2, be able to see the PhD troll. So now that Tyler has an elevator key, he's going to go over to this part of the map and end up using it on the wall. And now Tyler is going to go back to the elevator and see if it'll take him back up to the spawn. So does it take him back up to spawn? Yes, it does. It does indeed take him up back to spawn, and he's back to where he was at the beginning of the game. So the myth is confirmed. You can use a elevator key if you wish on the spawn elevator in Die Rise. Myth. Can you take Leroy back to the spawn in Buried if you make him fall into the magic wishing well? Alrighty guys, so myth 4 is submitted in by the myth busting team. So I am inside of the maze now on Buried, and I'm just getting the wishing well open with some grenades. I have booze in my inventory so that not only Leroy followed me through the witch's house, but also so that way I can get him to charge, so that way hopefully he'll just fall straight into the wishing well. Alright, so I've got Leroy right where I want him, and I'm going to give him the booze now and see if whether or not I can take him back to the spawn. So Leroy, will you fall in the wishing well? No, actually, he doesn't. The game refuses to let him go in there. So it looks like the myth is busted. I'm kind of surprised about this, because I swear I remember seeing somewhere people bringing Leroy back to spawn, but maybe they hacked it and they made him get there unofficially. But at least for the way that I did it, my method does not work. So because my method didn't work, it is busted. Alrighty guys, and now it is time for the final myth, and once again is going to be, can we get 2 lightning bows in Horizon Drag? Is there a duplication glitch that we can do, so that way all players can be overpowered instead of just one? So let's move over to Horizon Drag now and see if we can do it. Myth. Can you duplicate the lightning bow in Horizon Drag? Alrighty guys, so the very last myth is going to be submitted in by Joker935. So Joker wants to know if you can do this method by using a glitch with Mule Kick. So this explanation is going to be a little wordy, but let me try my best. So the player that would originally have the lightning bow, in this case me, would need to have it be their third gun, their Mule Kick gun specifically. Then I would need to down, and therefore I would lose both Mule Kick and my lightning bow. The lightning bow would just go back into its soul box from the final step when I was upgrading it. Then Tyler, the second player in this case, the one that wants to get the duplicated lightning bow, would have to use Phoenix Up on me. This will allow me to be able to get Mule Kick and my bow back. But there will now be a second one that is inside the soul box that Tyler can pick up and therefore have his own lightning bow. It is definitely very confusing, the process or the method you would have to go through to supposedly get this to work, but I promise you actions will speak louder than words, and if you just keep watching the footage, it will all make sense. So now I've got the lightning bow, and I'm going to down real quick. Alright, so I'm going to let this crawler kill me, and now I am therefore going to lose both Mule Kick and also therefore my bow. Now, the bow is going to go back into the soul box from the final step of the upgrade process, and once it's back in there, Tyler's going to pop a Phoenix up. So now, because I have Mule Kick back, I got the lightning bow, but he also, too, now has his own lightning bow because of the one that ended up going back inside the soul box. So we both now have the wonder weapon of our choice. And I would also like to believe that this would work with any of the other bows that are on the map and not just the lightning bow, but I'm not necessarily 100% sure. I just know that it works with at least the lightning bow. So the final myth is confirmed. If you want to, you can duplicate the bows on Drak. You just have to use a glitch with Mule Kick. Myth. Does the Chopper Gunner in Cold War have enough duration to kill the Megaton and his split variants in one go? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by Tyler. Now for those of you guys that don't know, in Cold War you can actually use kill streaks as a method of killing zombies, which is pretty neat. Now the Chopper Gunner is one of these available kill streaks. So I'm going to call it in right now and see if whether or not that I can use it to kill the Megaton zombie. Now, the way that the Chopper Gunner works is that it highlights anything in the nearby area, yellow for friendly and red for enemy. But unfortunately, when I call in the Chopper Gunner, I can't see any red highlights that give away the Megaton's location. It is just left completely blank, and all I just see is me. Now, here's the thing, is that I'm not saying that you can't kill the Megaton, but I don't know how the hell that you're supposed to find him, because if the Chopper Gunner doesn't show any red highlights, I don't know where to shoot. And I unfortunately was not able to kill him because of this. So I'm going to only be able to leave the myth at plausible because I didn't even get a chance to shoot the Megaton, so I don't know if it could kill him, but I would like to assume it would. It's just that you have to know where to end up putting the Chopper Gunner. Myth. On Moon, if you keep the power off and lure the astronaut zombie to the biodome, can you use the blast from killing him to jump on a risen jump pad? Alrighty guys, so myth 2 is going to be submitted in by Lava. Now after waiting a millennia for the astronaut to get here because he is so slow, I am now going to shoot him in the head so that way when I end up having my character bounce backward, I will hopefully land on a jump pad. Alright, so I think I'm in the best position I could possibly be, so I'm about to walk up to the astronaut and shoot him in the head, but he didn't really launch me that far, or at least it's not as far as I think he was going to. I got shot more horizontally than vertically. Now, you could argue that maybe it was just the angle I was at, but I really don't think that I was anywhere close. I think it's safe to say it's busted because even though I didn't have the best visual angle, I can just tell the way that my character was going, he wasn't going to make it. Myth. Can you kill a denizen that is riding you by cooking a grenade? Okay guys, myth 3 is submitted in by Nitwit. Now to get the grenade to explode in the way I want to, I'm going to hold it preemptively. I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to let the denizen jump on me, and if I do this, it does indeed allow me to save myself, because the grenade ends up exploding by the time I let it go. As long as your character is within the blast radius of that grenade that you throw away, you will be able to blow up the denizen and be able to get him off your head, so you don't have to resort to stabbing. Which means that myth 3 is confirmed. Myth. Can you shoot Leroy with a single fire weapon and not upset him? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 is submitted in by the myth busting team. So now I'm going to unlock Leroy out of his jail cell, and in a second here I'm going to shoot him with my M1911, which is a single fire bullet gun. And I'm going to only shoot him once, just to see what he does. If I end up shooting him and he runs away, the myth is busted. If I shoot him and he stays put, the myth is confirmed. So what happens if I shoot Leroy? If I shoot him once, it looks like he doesn't do anything, which is surprising. I even did it again, and once again, he just does not react. I mean, he does do a little bit of a flinch and does get spooked, but not enough that he runs away. And I do this by shooting him in multiple locations. I shoot him in the legs, I shoot him in the butt, I shoot him in the face. Every single one of these doesn't upset him until I shoot multiple times, and then he will end up trying to go back to his jail cell. So this is interesting. The myth is confirmed. After all these years, I just thought that Leroy would end up being spooked no matter what. But I think the hesitancy to shoot him at all and not test this for myself is probably the reason why I assumed this for so long. So yeah, if you shoot Leroy only once, don't sweat it guys. It only matters if you shoot him with like an automatic weapon or if you deliberately spam him. Alrighty guys, and now it is time for the final myth of the episode. And once again, it's going to be, can you fall in the elevator shaft of Die Rise and still somehow survive? What is exactly what we're going to do to be able to end up pulling this sort of cool trick? It's not hacking, it's not mods, it's something a lot more simpler than that, and I will show you right now. Myth. Can you survive falling down the elevator shaft in Die Rise if you mantle onto another floor? Alrighty guys, so the final myth is submitted in by the myth busting team. So yeah, this is basically how I'm going to test this. If you guys don't understand what I'm referring to, let me explain. So in Die Rise, when you're ending up taking the elevators around for a method of transportation, if the elevator is like really far down and you're really far up, all the other elevator floors that are underneath of you in between the actual elevator itself and you are still open. So if I want to get into a lower floor and I don't exactly want to wait for an elevator to show up, hypothetically speaking, I should just be able to fall myself and be able just to mantle into the other floors by just grabbing onto them with spacebar. And that's what I'm going to test right now. I'm going to disable God mode and just fall backwards and see if I can save myself. So here we go. And it looks like when I hit spacebar, what do you know? It works. I know my reaction is very casual in this video, but I promise you when I did this the initial first time, I was like, that's cool as hell, and I was honestly surprised it worked. So yeah, if you fall down the elevator shaft, guys, just make sure that you are looking into the floor that you wish to end up being on, and just hit whatever your mantle button would be, spacebar on PC, or X or A if you are on PlayStation or Xbox. But yeah, the final myth is confirmed. Myth. Is there a secret hidden VMP wall buy in Shadows of Evil? Alrighty guys, so myth 1 is going to be submitted in by the myth busting team. Now on Shadows of Evil, supposedly there is a hidden VMP wall buy that got scrapped. Now this is going to be available in a certain section of the map right here at this specific wall, and it's kind of hard to see just due to the fact that I really couldn't get the right angle, and you're really not supposed to be here in the first place. But in a second here, you will see there is a VMP chalk outline that you can grab and pick up. This is the best angle I was able to get where you can see the damn thing. It's right there. Now if you do eventually get the hit scan for it, you can purchase the VMP off of this wall buy and be able to use it. I am assuming that Treyarch just wanted to have a wall buy stationed at pretty much every single one of the areas within Shadows of Evil, and then it became overkill and they decided to just hide it behind a texture. So that means that myth number 1 is confirmed, and now we can move on to myth number 2. Myth. Can you use the battery part for the electric trap on transit on the Pack-a-Punch buildable in town? Alrighty guys, both myth 2 and the footage in the background are both going to be provided by Tyler. Now for this myth to take place, what we need to do is we need to get the battery that is from the power station specifically, which is for the electric trap, and then we need to bring it all the way over to the Pack-a-Punch buildable in the bottom part of the bank. Both the electric trap and the Pack-a-Punch on transit require a battery for one of its buildable parts. Now the interesting thing is that the battery for the Pack-a-Punch machine and the electric trap are basically identical. They even look very similar when you have them in your inventory. So supposedly the way that the myth works is that you can substitute the battery from the electric trap and use it in the Pack-a-Punch machine. There is no necessarily gain to this because all the Pack-a-Punch parts are underneath of the bank and the electric trap parts are all at the power station, so this is kind of something that you have to go out of your way to do, but it is interesting nonetheless. Now another interesting thing about this myth is that doing more research online, apparently supposedly that the battery for the electric trap, even though it can be used for the Pack-a-Punch, it does not work in reverse. You can't use the Pack-a-Punch battery to build the electric trap. Now if that's going to be the case, then I would say that this is probably because this is a glitch from Treyarch's end, and this is probably an oversight that they forgot to patch out. So Tyler's about to finish building the Pack-a-Punch machine right now, with the electric trap battery, mind you, and then he's going to see with the money he got from the bank if he can Pack-a-Punch this M1911. If this works, the myth is confirmed. If it does not, the myth is busted. And it looks like to me the Pack-a-Punch works just fine. It Pack-a-Punched the M1911, and you can see from his inventory, even though it's very hard to tell, Tyler's character has the original Pack-a-Punch battery inside of his inventory. So this means that myth number 2 is confirmed. You can build the Pack-a-Punch on transit if you want to with the battery from the electric trap, even though this doesn't give you any sort of gain whatsoever. Myth. If the whole squad is down and the one player with a self-revive Gobblegum bleeds out, will it soft lock BO3? Alrighty guys, myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by Sand Dudes. Funny name by the way, dude. And we're going to be seeing whether or not that if I'm running something like, let's say, self-med, if I end up bleeding out instead of reviving myself by killing a zombie with a ray gun, what will happen? Will the game end up glitching and freezing? Will Tyler and I both die and the game will end? Or will one of us somehow miraculously be revived and the game will continue on? Alright, so any second now I'm about to bleed out and see if whether or not that the game will soft lock. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think is going to happen. And here I am about to die, and the game ends, which means Myth 3 is busted. The game does not soft lock, it will just say that you have failed. So this is basically going to make it so that way if the person, for whatever reason, doesn't end up killing a zombie during their entire self-medication, the game will just end up ending as if you normally died. Myth: can you kill Leroy in Buried? Alrighty guys, myth number 4 is going to be submitted in by Nitwit. Now all you really need to do, I assume, for this strategy to work, is to take Leroy to a place that I know anybody can die, which is near the Pack-a-Punch. So I have brought Leroy all the way to Pack-a-Punch, and I'm about to give him booze and see if whether or not I can get him to charge into the very bottom of this crater, right where I can end up tripping and falling myself. So I'm going to give him the alcohol now and see if Leroy will do his thing. So Leroy's going to charge, and it looks like he does indeed fall at the bottom of the well, which is kind of funny. In fact, just to prove a point, I very easily fell in myself, just trying to see him do it. So yeah, you very easily can fall in here and kill yourself, so why not Leroy? Which means that myth 4 is confirmed. You can do this if you really want to screw up with your teammates and end up getting the game to be basically soft locked. Alrighty guys, and now it is time for the final myth of the episode, and once again it is going to be, can you kill George Romero in Call of the Dead in 1 minute or less? And I want to remind you guys really quickly here before we start this, that George Romero has 250,000 health per player, which means that just in single player, this is going to be a bitch to do. So I've got a couple ideas up my sleeve, and I'm going to see if whether or not any of these ideas will be able to kill George within 1 minute or less. So let's hop to Call of the Dead and see what we can do. Myth: can you kill George Romero in 1 minute or less in Call of the Dead? Alrighty guys, here is the final myth of the episode. So I'm loaded up in here in Call of the Dead, and I have a upgraded FAMAS and a upgraded Dragunov within my inventory. The FAMAS is for fire rate, the Dragunov is for damage, because these are basically the two best guns statistically for doing damage to George. And the second here, I'm going to have a timer on the screen, and I'm going to shoot George to see if I can kill him in 1 minute or less. So here we go, I'm going to shoot George now. The timer has officially started. Now I'm mostly going for headshots because these do indeed do more damage to George Romero. Now I know that I could use double tap, but double tap in Black Ops 1 did not increase your damage. All it did was increase your fire rate. But now that I think about it, it would be kind of useful because then I would get more damage out technically, but it's too late for that now. So I'm just going to keep shooting at George Romero and see if hopefully this is enough. Now keep in mind, once again, I want to say a second time here, George has 250,000 health for every player in the lobby. So I gotta be quick if I want to kill George in less than a minute here. Now I'm switching over to the Dragunov already because I'm ready to have ammo for the FAMAS. I can't even imagine how hard this would be if I did not have God mode on, but it looks like I did indeed kill George Romero. With I think in total 18 seconds to spare, I think it was around 42 seconds by the time I finally got him to take a knee, which is technically when he's considered dead in the game because that's when he stops attacking you. But at the end of the day, the final myth is confirmed. You can kill George Romero in Call of the Dead in 1 minute or less if you were to play your cards absolutely perfectly. But keep in mind is that I had God mode on and life doesn't go perfectly, so I doubt you'd be able to do this IRL, but I encourage you to try to step up to the plate if you are feeling in the mood for a challenge. Myth: if you activate the Now You See Me Gobblegum while having zombie blood, will it bug out BO3? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by Sandudes. Now on Origins, we're going to be trying to pop a Now You See Me Gobblegum while we have zombie blood active. Now You See Me ends up working in the opposite way of In Plain Sight, where the zombies will only target that specific player that's popped the Gobblegum. But it looks like that if you have zombie blood, it overrides Now You See Me, because you can see that Dan is running around all over the place, and the zombies are only going after him, despite me popping Now You See Me. The Now You See Me Gobblegum will only work as intended if you don't have something that is contradicting it. So for example, when I pop Now You See Me while zombie blood is not on my character, the zombies will attack just me. So Myth 1 is busted. This doesn't end up breaking the game, it just makes it so that way the game has to make a choice, and it chooses Zombie Blood over Now You See Me. Myth: does Zombie Blood make you immune to the Origins robot feat when they crush you? Alrighty guys, so myth number 2 is going to be submitted in by my buddy Dan. Now, I'm back on Origins, so I'm going to be trying to pop a Zombie Blood to see if it's a valid means of defense against the robots on Origins. I'm going to let him step on me here in a second and use Zombie Blood to end up defending myself, but it looks like it doesn't quite work. The Zombie Blood did not stop the game from giving me a game over screen, which means that myth 2 is busted. You can't use Zombie Blood to stop the robots from crushing you on Origins. You need a golden helmet to do that. Myth: in BO3, if you turn a zombie and then re-pack-a-punch a gun, will the turned zombie still persist even though your alternate ammo type has changed? Alrighty guys, myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by my other buddy, Tyler. So basically what Tyler is asking is that if you end up taking a double pack-a-punch gun with the turned ability on it, and you shoot a zombie and make it so that way he is turned and fighting for you, if you then change your gun ammo type to something else, will the turned zombie still be running around killing things, or will he just simply go away? And it looks like that the answer is that he will end up staying because I have dead wire on my VMP, but my turned zombie is still running around killing things. And fun bonus fact, actually, you can end up stacking the ammo types because right now I've electrified my turned zombie with dead wire and he's going around killing things like a super zombie. So this is going to mean that myth 3 is confirmed. If you want to, you can end up using turned, and then if you change your mind, you can go and pack-a-punch it again, and your turned zombie will be able to defend you during the pack-a-punch process. Myth: can Ted kick you off the transit bus if you knife him while you're down? Alrighty guys, myth number 4 is going to be submitted in by Lava. Now, for those of you guys that don't know this, on transit, you can actually end up pissing off Ted the bus driver by stabbing or shooting him. And if you do this enough times and provoke him too much, you will end up having it where he will grief or troll you back, and one of these things he can do is by just flat out kicking you off of the bus. But what happens if we do this inside of a down state? If our character is like prone to the ground because we're incapacitated, does Ted have the ability to reach our character model and be able to therefore kick us off of the bus? And the funny thing is that the result is not what you're expecting it to be. So as we're ending up approaching the next stop here for the bus, I successfully managed to piss off Ted where he does try to throw me off. Now, what ends up happening is that I actually have it where I get stuck on the bus's door, and Dan, who is standing behind me, gets flung off of the bus instead, which is really hilarious. So Ted throws off everybody from the bus, and not just the one player that specifically pissed him off. So what happens is that the down player will get stuck, but the players that are all standing up, if they're within range of the door, he will kick them out instead. However, this doesn't mean that you're completely immune from Ted kicking you off of the bus, because if you're next to the door of the bus, and he gets pissed at you then, if you're downed or standing, regardless, he will still kick you off. It's just that he's not able to kick you off when you're closer to him because his range only can go so far. So you basically have to be already out the door for him to successfully kick you off if you're incapacitated. So the 4th myth is confirmed, it's just that it's very unlikely to happen where he'll just flat out completely kick you off. If you're downed, you really need to be standing for that. Alrighty guys, and now it is time for the final myth. We are going to be testing if whether or not that you can duplicate wonder weapons. For example, can we duplicate something like, let's say, the Wonder Waff in World at War? I don't know. Let's head over to World at War right now and see if whether or not that's possible. Myth: can you get a wonder weapon from the mystery box while your teammate has it in the pack-a-punch? Alrighty guys, the last myth is submitted in by, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name here, but I believe it's Zacko Xantern. If that's not your name, my friend, I apologize, but from here on out, I'm just going to call you Xantern. I hope that's okay with you. But yes, basically Xantern wants to know if you can duplicate wonder weapons by having the person that originally got it put it in the pack-a-punch machine, and then the other person in the lobby spins the mystery box and see if they can get lucky, because the game technically thinks as long as the wonder weapon's in the pack-a-punch machine, that technically nobody has one anymore. Now, to make a long myth short, so that way you guys don't have to go through seeing the process of what we had to do via going through RNG hell, I'm going to explain the most simplified way of trying to end up explaining what we need to do to even have a chance of possibly getting the result we're looking for. So let's talk about how that the wonder weapons work in Call of Duty. So basically, when you play on certain maps, and this is most notable in the older games, if a player pulls a wonder weapon out of the mystery box and it's only capped for one player, then that means that nobody else can ever pull that gun out of the box until the other person that originally had it either downs, or in this case technically doesn't end up having it in their inventory anymore when, for example, they put it in, like, let's say the Pack-a-Punch machine, where briefly it's out of the player's inventory and technically doesn't exist. The way that the mystery box works is where when you end up getting a certain gun out of the mystery box and you accept it, that gun specifically is no longer within the pool of guns, so that way you don't get a duplicate. This is why you don't see people running around with like 2 or 3 ray guns and end up spamming that into oblivion. So what happens is that if you get a certain gun and you accept it and it's no longer in the prize pool, except for when you get the weird exception where, like, let's say you get a dual-wield version of some guns, like I know the CZ75s and the 5.7s do that, but that's just an odd exception. When you end up getting a certain amount of guns out of the box, since those ones are gone, if we do something like, let's say, do the give all command, if we end up technically having all the guns and therefore remove all the guns out of the pool, what happens if we specifically just remove the wonder weapon, in this case the Wonder Waff, out of our inventory and we have everything else? Will the mystery box only be able to give us just specifically the Wonder Waff because we have every other gun within our inventory? And now, after that giantly wordy explanation, here is the final result. The answer is yes. If you give yourself every gun besides the Wonder Weapon is the only thing that can come out of the mystery box. So now, knowing what we know, if you technically put the Wonder Weapon in the Pack-a-Punch machine, for the brief period of time that that gun is in the Pack-a-Punch machine, it is technically available within the pool of guns for the mystery box again. Which therefore means that there is a brief window of time where, hypothetically speaking, if you were very, very lucky, you could have it where a player could approach the mystery box, spin it, and pull the Wonder Weapon that was just shoved in the Pack-a-Punch machine by another player, and therefore technically duplicating that gun. Now, before you guys go around trying to duplicate Wonder Weapons, I do have to put a giant asterisk here on this final myth. And it's going to be these two things, is that, number one, when it comes to this last myth, is that I can't vouch if whether or not that this actually works, because all this stuff that I was just showing you guys was in a hypothetical situation in solo. Me and Dan tried so hard to get into the same lobby and try to do this officially, but when we tried to play World at War Plutonium, where we had the most success for this myth, we could not end up playing together. We were just not able to connect to each other no matter what we did. I promise you, there's no way we were able to brute force it. And then when we tried to play the Steam copy, we couldn't get SV_cheats to work because for some odd reason, it was just outside of our control. So the closest thing that I could do was to load into solo, show you guys that when you accumulate a certain amount of guns and they're no longer in the pool for the mystery box, and explain the mechanics of how the mystery box and the Pack-a-Punch work, to explain my thought process, that is essentially the best I was unfortunately able to do. And second of all is that with technically not having Dan here, I'm not able to verify if whether or not what happens to the original Wonder Weapon that was shoved inside the Pack-a-Punch machine. Technically, if you put the gun in the Pack-a-Punch machine and it no longer exists, and then the other person in your lobby spins the box and gets it out of there, I don't know if that removes the original Wonder Weapon that was shoved in the Pack-a-Punch machine or would duplicate it. And because I cannot verify either of these things, the best I can do is label the last myth as plausible, because everything is hypothetical, and I didn't want to completely scrap this myth. So I would recommend doing your own research to try to see if whether or not that this is actually something you can feasibly do, because the best I can do for right now is label it at plausible. Hey everybody, Black Ninja 797 here, and welcome back to another episode of Call of Duty Zombies Myth-Busting Mondays. And in today's video, for the final myth, we are going to be seeing if whether or not it's possible to make your teammates fly, not you, but your teammates, with the Paralyzer in Buried, which would be sick as hell because I know some people are jealous of that flying ability, but is it possible if we can share with each other, because that would make things much easier. If you guys end up enjoying today's episode, please make sure you guys drop a like and leave a comment down below if you have a myth of your very own that we'd like to have be featured in next week's episode. With all that being said, guys, I hope you end up enjoying this week's episode of Call of Duty Zombies Myth-Busting Mondays. Myth: can you stab a hellhound to death in World at War and not go down? Alrighty guys, so here is myth number 1. I am loaded into Drages, and I'm going to try to stab a Hellhound to death and not go down. For those of you guys that don't know, the knifing in World at War is basically horrible and pretty much useless, so it's very easy to get caught in a pinch, but I'm still going to try this anyways. Let me know in the comment section down below, do you think that this myth is confirmed, plausible, or busted? And it looks like on my last knife right there, I successfully have killed a Hellhound. In fact, I'm about to kill another one, which means the first myth is confirmed. If you play your cards correctly, you can stab a Hellhound to death and not go down. In fact, fun fact, I actually did the entire round doing this and was able to survive. So I would recommend doing this only if you pretty much have no ammo and no other choice, because with the way that World of War mechanics are, you're still more likely going to die more times than not when you attempt this method. Myth. In the Black Ops 1 menu on the TVs, does it show Quick Revive in the Speed Cola location on the map 5? Alright guys, this next myth is quick, but it's still a fun fact nonetheless. So I'm just going to tell you immediately that the myth is confirmed, but I'm going to show you why it's confirmed. Now I don't know if you saw it, so I'm going to replay this part to show you. On one of the lower left TVs, you guys can see this pixelated image of 5, and it shows Quick Revive in a different location. For those that play 5, they will know that this is not the original location in the final game. This is instead an early concept that just never got changed. My guess is that nobody at Treyarch expected us to pay attention to any of the TVs and notice this little fact, but yes, it is in a completely different location. In fact, it's where Speed normally is. So Myth 2 is confirmed, and now you guys have a little bonus fact about the Black Ops 1 main menu. Myth. Can you shrink the werewolf in Dead of the Night with the Alistair's Annihilator? Alrighty guys, myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by my friend Tyler. Now, other than the baby gun on Shangri-La, I believe that the Alistair's Annihilator is the only other gun in COD Zombies that can end up shrinking enemies, or have a shrink ray effect on it. Now, the Alistair's Annihilator, unlike the baby gun in Shangri-La, this is random when it happens, because the Alistair's Annihilator has different ammo mods, so that way different effects will happen. One of them is shrinking zombies. It can sometimes shoot a black hole, or sometimes it can just fling them in the air and spin them in like a mini tornado, like how it did a moment ago. Now, the video footage you were watching here is from a prior video of mine where I accidentally got to round 70 on Dead of the Night after only playing this map back when it launched 5 years ago, and I was using the Alistair's Annihilator from the early 30s to round 70 and shot plenty of werewolves within those several rounds. And at no point when I shot that werewolf did it ever shrink down. Now, in addition to my own experience, I also did do a quick Google search to see if anybody has uploaded a clip anywhere or shown footage of this happening where a werewolf has been shrunk by the Alistair's Annihilator, and I couldn't find anything. Now, because the Alistair's Annihilator is one of the quickest ways you can kill a werewolf in Dead of the Night, I cannot imagine that there would be no footage or no indications anywhere of this happening online. It would be somewhere and be something that I would like to believe you could readily find. So after all that explaining, I'm going to say that myth 3 is busted. I don't think you can shrink a werewolf in Dead of the Night with the Alistair's Annihilator, but knowing Black Ops 4 and how goofy it is, that would have been really funny. Myth. With Red Insta-Kill in Black Ops 2, can you get the free perk in Die Rise by killing jumping jacks? Alrighty guys, myth number 4 is going to be submitted in by the Black Ops 2 Turbine, which is a really funny name by the way. Now Turbine, my friend, I was not able to do the myth in the way that I truly wished, and I'm very sorry about that, but I'm going to explain why. So in Black Ops 2, for those of you guys that don't know, there was a system called permaperks, and these permaperks allowed you to get special abilities by doing certain actions. One of these is a Red Insta-Kill, which you can end up getting when you get a normal Insta-Kill. The way you activate this is that you have to go an entire insta-kill without killing or being hit, and then that makes it so that way the next time you get an insta-kill, just simply touching anything will automatically kill it upon impact. Now, basically, based off of that information, we're trying to figure out if whether or not that this will all work on the jumping jacks, which is an enemy in Die Rise that's supposed to be the substitute to the Hellhounds for that map. And those enemies, if you get 100% accuracy on them, you get a free perk. So, if we run into them, therefore technically not missing our bullets, do we get a free perk? But unfortunately, the problem was that we were not able to force the game to drop us a insta-kill when that round took place. And since we weren't able to find any cheat codes that we can use within the Plutonium copy of the game to spawn in drops when we wanted them, we weren't able to get it due to RNG bad luck. So I'm sorry to say, my friend, but the best I can do is label this myth at plausible for now, but I would like to say your odds are very high because I can't imagine why that this wouldn't work. Alrighty guys, but now we move on to the final myth of the episode here today, and once again it is going to be, can you be able to make your own teammates fly with the paralyzer in Buried? Is there a way we can help them out navigating the map and make it so that way we don't always have to rely on just specifically the one guy that happened to get lucky and pull it out of the mystery box for flying around the map? Let's move over to Buried now, get the paralyzer out of the mystery box, and see if we can make our teammates fly. Myth. Can you make your teammates fly with the paralyzer in Buried? Alrighty guys, the last myth of the episode is going to be submitted in by Nitwit. So I just pulled the paralyzer out of the mystery box, and I've got my buddy Dan with me in this game to see if I can be able to assist him and help him fly. We're going to go over to a specific part of the map that I know you can only reach via flying because right now it's locked. And I want you guys in the comment section down below to let me know if you think that this myth is confirmed or busted, because I'm curious. So in a second here, let's try to make Dan fly. So this was the spot I was referring to. I was referring to the roof on the bank. Now the roof on the bank is like one of the more popular camping spots for Buried other than the Juggernog hallway. And this you can really only get access to if you buy the couch. But you can fly up there with the paralyzer. The question is that can I do this for Dan? Right now I'm trying to shoot at his legs and see if I can get him to fly this way. And I sort of am getting close. He's not entirely getting onto the roof, but he's definitely going upwards, so we are on the right track. Now, I was telling Dan that I think it's just mostly because he was looking backwards about why he couldn't get on the roof. So I was just like, hey Dan, you know, just look over at the roof. Maybe by looking at the roof, this will be easier for you. But it really didn't change much, surprisingly. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not necessarily where Dan's looking. It's more rather about if I help him. So I just decided to go up on the roof with him, and the moment that I did that, that worked. So that means that the final myth is confirmed. You can make your teammates fly in Buried if you want to help them out. It's just that you yourself, the person with the paralyzer in this case, also has to temporarily go that way with them, because that was really the only way I was able to get to work. Maybe you don't necessarily have to do that, but at least that's how I did that. But yeah. Myth. Can you knife faster while crouching? Alrighty guys, myth number 1 is submitted in by Glabursko. Now this one's going to be a quick one because of how simple it is, but I'm still curious to see what the result is nonetheless, because technically I can't disprove this right away just because I've never bothered to calculate the speed difference between these two different types of stabbing animations. But right now I've got Glabursko and Dan right here, and I'm going to have them both knife at ideally the exact same time. Glabursko is going to stand, Dan is going to crouch, and we're just going to see if there's any difference at all. So very shortly here, on a count of 3, I'm going to tell them to both swing and see if whether or not they are in sync. So 1, 2, and 3. And even though they eventually do go out of sync because one of them stops knifing, they were in sync for at least the first 2 swings, which means the first myth is busted. There is no difference in the swing speed, whether or not you're crouching is the exact same. Myth. In Buried, if you have Juggernog, can Leroy run you over? Alrighty guys, myth number 2 is going to be submitted in by Ace of Spades. So the myth of his that I'm going to be doing is whether or not that if you have Juggernog, can Leroy run you over in Buried. I've got Booze now, and I'm going to be having Leroy try to go down the Juggernog hallway and see if whether or not that he can end up killing me. I'm just going to have Dan take the zombie because it's trying to molest me while I'm trying to test this myth. Alright, now that the zombie is done molesting me, I'm going to give the boost to Leroy and see if whether or not he'll run me over. He is a little bit off for where I want him to go, but he still ends up hitting me, and he also ends up downing me, which means that the second myth is confirmed. If you have Juggernog, Leroy will still kill you. Myth. If you are using Who's Who on Die Rise, can your teammate revive your body while your Who's Who clone jumps off the map? Alrighty guys, myth number 3 is submitted in by DugTyler. So, for those of you guys that don't remember how Who's Who... Sorry about that, everybody. I actually got tongue-tied there. Anyway, what I was trying to say was that if you end up having Who's Who, are you able to end up... I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, Jesus Christ, I can't speak today. Okay, what I was trying to say is that for those of you guys that don't remember how Who's Who works in Die Rise, let me explain. So, for those of you guys that don't remember, Who's Who was a way that you could basically get a second life in Die Rise. If you had the perk and you downed, you would respawn back with just a num 1911, and you could go revive your dead body as if it was another player. So what Tyler is asking is that in a cooperative game, if you have Who's Who and you become a clone of yourself, can you jump off the map as said clone and be able to have it where your teammate in the lobby can revive your dead or downed body? And the answer seems to be no, because as soon as I fall off the map as my clone, I'm immediately dead and spectating Dan, which means the third myth is busted. If your clone also dies too, you are completely dead and you can't have your teammate revive your body. Myth: unburied, if you pack-a-punch the LSAT, if you return to the spawn room, can you buy ammo from the LSAT wall buy? Alrighty guys, myth number 4 submitted in by Turbine from Black Ops 2. First of all, for step 1, we need to buy an LSAT. So I'm going to go over to the LSAT wall buy right now and pick up one. I'm not going to spawn one in with console commands just in case this bugs us out. So now we've got a LSAT. And then step 2 obviously would be to pack-a-punch the LSAT, so I'm in the pack-a-punch room and doing that right now. And once it is finished, I'm going to head back through the wishing well and then go back to the spawn so that way I can try the last step. And then here we are for step 3, the final step. We're going to see if whether or not it will actually let us buy ammo off the LSAT wall buy. I just need to have enough points to be able to buy the ammo, so I've got to kill a couple of zombies first. But once I've cleared the way and killed these zombies, I'm going to activate no clip and fly up there. So here we go, I've finished the wave, I'm activating no clip right now. Feel free to let me know in the comments down below if you think that this is going to be confirmed or busted. So here we go, I'm typing in no clip, and let's fly over to the wall buy. So this is my current ammo count. When I go up to it, it does indeed let me buy ammo. Now obviously you would need no clip to do this because the little ledge that you stand on for the wall buy breaks, so you wouldn't be able to do this in a legit match, but they did program it in anyway. So the fourth myth is confirmed, but you have to cheat, just so you know. Alrighty guys, and now we're moving on to the final myth of the episode, and once again is going to be, can you get a upgraded or pack-a-punched Bowie knife in Black Ops 3. I believe you guys are going to get a kick out of this, so let's move over to the final myth now and see if we can get a upgraded Bowie knife. Myth: can you use the wall power gobblegum to upgrade the Bowie knife? Alrighty guys, the last myth is submitted in by Dr. Zed, aka Dan. So I'm on Fier Drages because this is the easiest map to get a Bowie knife on, since it's only basically like 4 doors to open the entire thing up. And I've got the wall power gobblegum, and I'm just going to go up to a Bowie knife and simply end up holding my interact key and see if it'll upgrade it for free. I know that in some of the other later games that there is pack-a-punch Bowie knife Easter eggs, such as on Black Ops 4, but what about Black Ops 3? So we're going to go over to the Bowie knife now, see if this question can be answered, and it looks like that the gobblegum stays in my inventory and just gives me a base Bowie knife, which means that the final myth is busted. You cannot upgrade the Bowie knife with the wall power gobblegum in Black Ops 3, but that would have been cool if it would have let us done so, but we had to wait at least until Black Ops 4 to get it. Myth: can you buy ammo for the dual-wield 5.7s in Origins with the 5.7 wall buy? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by DugTyler. Now on Origins, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there is a 5.7 wall buy right before you go up to the excavation site right here. Now I am just going to waste some ammo real quick so that way if I can buy ammo, the ammo count will go up for you guys on screen. But it looks like that when I go to buy the ammo, it just takes away the 1.57 and gives me a singular 5.7 instead of letting me keep my dual-wield ones. So it actually means that the first myth is busted. This doesn't give you ammo, this just takes away your 1.57, which means you can only get ammo refills if you get a max ammo drop, which is kind of stupid because it's literally just the exact same gun. It's just that you have a dual version. I have zero idea why that Treyarch thought that it was necessary to not let the player get ammo for a dual-wield 5.7 off of this wall buy, but they just for some reason thought it was okay. Myth: in Die Rise, will the game take away all your guns if you try to get into an old glitch spot in the Buddha room? Alrighty guys, so here is myth number 2. Now supposedly in Die Rise there is an old glitch spot that got patched here in the Buddha room, where if you run into one of the columns here that fell onto the ground, the game will take away all of your primary guns and just leave you with an M1911. Now back in the day, I didn't give 2 shits about Die Rise, so I never tried anything like this, so I don't know if this actually exists, but I'm going to try it right now. To my knowledge, all you have to do is just run into this little spot right here, and it looks like it is indeed true because my guns are now all gone. All I have is the M1911 again, which means that the second myth is confirmed. So I guess that this used to be an old glitch spot that instead of just completely patching it out, they punish the player for just simply attempting it. So if you're trying to train the Buddha room, just avoid that corner at all costs so the game doesn't take your stuff. Myth: in Tag Your Totem, can you use the Path of Sorrow Specialist to go back up the ice slide? Alrighty guys, so here is myth number 3. Now on Tag Your Totem, you can end up going down the ice slide just like how you used to in Call of the Dead. So I'm pulling out the Path of Sorrow Specialist weapon now, and I'm going to go down the slide, and then I'm going to see if the lunge ability that you get when you level up a little bit will allow me to go back up the ice slide. I just want to show you that the base jump does not allow you to do it, but as soon as I start to end up using my lunge ability, I can now go back up the ice slide from the opposite directions, which means that the third myth is confirmed. If you go down the ice slide and you want to go back up, just pull out your specialist, just make sure it is at least level 2 from killing a couple zombies. Myth. In Mob of the Dead, can you get the blue skull on the roof near the plane for the free Blundergat through the ceiling? Alrighty guys, so there is 5 blue skulls that are in Mob of the Dead that if you collect them all with the Hell's Retriever, you therefore can get a free Blundergat out of the Warden's office instead of pulling it out of the mystery box. Now there is one skull in particular that is up on the roof near the plane that is slightly out of the map. But instead of trying to do it that way, we're going to try to see if we can end up just throwing the Hell's Retriever through the corner of the roof near the cafeteria. Now, if I aim the Hell's Retriever right here, this is right about where it would be on the roof. It's just that the ceiling's blocking my way. Or is it? Because it looks like that I just got it successfully through the damn ceiling, which means that the fourth myth is not only confirmed, but extremely useful. Alright guys, so we only got one myth left for the episode, and once again it is going to be, can you launch the Witches in Buried with the Trample Steam? Nobody and their grandmother has probably ever used the Trample Steam when going through the Witch's house in Buried, so let's see if whether or not this is something in the game that just nobody has bothered to do. Myth. Can you launch a Witch in Buried with a Trample Steam? Alrighty guys, here is the last myth of the episode. So I'm about to finish crafting the Trample Steam, and now I'm going to make my way to the witch's house. So I'm in the house now, and here comes a witch, so here goes nothing. So I'm just going to lay prone, so that way hopefully she'll stand on it, because she could go around. And right now she is trying to grab me, and she's standing exactly on the Trample Steam, but nothing is happening. Well, this was a massive letdown. I was hoping on making this bitch fly. So it looks like that the last myth is busted. Treyarch, you gotta step up your game, man. You gotta allow us to do stupid shit like this. This would be funny as hell. Myth. Can you use killing time to freeze the jump scare on Origins? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is an absolute banger. The concept of this just sounds super cool, so I'm really looking forward to showing you guys what we found. So Dan is going to pop a killing time here in a second while I'm going to look at the location for the jump scare. I don't know if you guys remember this. A lot of people remember the Mob of the Dead one, but on Origins, if you look at the church, there was also a jump scare. Now, for this to at least be possible, I have to have really good timing. So one of the ways I'm going to do this is have Dan stand in my peripheral vision and have it where when he eats the gobblegum, I can look at his character and end up judging it based off of that. So he'll end up putting away his gun, eat the gobblegum, and when his gun pops back out into his hands, if that happens, the killing time will now be active, and then at that point, I'm going to scope in. So let's do this. Dan is going to pop killing time, and I'm going to zoom in, and it looks like that the jump scare just flashes per normal. And killing time is active, by the way. I don't know if you noticed it right away, but if you look at the environment now, everything is starting to slow down or be frozen. So killing time was indeed active. It's just that the jump scare does not count and is a pre-rendered cutscene. So the first myth is busted, but I do think that they should add this as a feature in future games because it would just be flat out funny. Myth. Does the gobblegum create power work on the Apothecon Servant in Revelations if you haven't shot the upgrade rocks? Alrighty guys, so the second myth is going to be submitted in by my friend Tyler. Now at first I was a little confused on which gobblegum and method that Tyler was referring to, but I eventually figured it out and I got the gist. So, Tyler wants to know if you can take the Create Power Gobblegum, which is the gobblegum that packs the weapon that you get out of the mystery box for you so you don't have to go to the Pack-a-Punch machine. Does that end up working on the Apothecon Servant? Now I'm about to get the Apothecon Servant out of the mystery box here in a second, and I'm going to end up using this gobblegum on it. Now at first I almost did mess up here and miss this, but I am going to slow down the footage to show you guys that I did have the gobblegum active just seconds before I picked up the Apothecon Servant. Now, unlike the Rift E9, which Pack-a-Punched as soon as I picked it up out of the box just fine, the Apothecon Servant still remains unupgraded, which means that this gun cannot be Pack-a-Punched until you've done that side quest where you've ended up getting the rocks out of the sky, which means that the second myth is busted. You can't use Create Power as a shortcut to work around the side quest. You still have to get all the rocks and do this legitimately. Myth. Can you unpatch the Sliquifier in Dire Eyes? Okay, so I know that for Myth 3 here, you guys are going to automatically call bullshit, because this sounds like a Jimbathy video, But yes, supposedly there is a way you can unpatch the Sliquifier, which is one of the statistically best wonder weapons we've ever had in the map Die Rise. So how in the flying hell are you supposed to end up doing this? Well, believe it or not, it's actually pretty simple. I'm not even joking. Literally all you have to do is go to this sign and shoot it 10 times, and that's all you do. And supposedly this will fix this Sliquifier and make it strong like it was back on launch. Trust me, I understand that you guys are calling bullshit still. I wouldn't believe myself if I was watching this either. But let me explain why that this is the case. I'm going to show you guys a YouTube short about where I learned this from, and actually a comment that explains exactly how that this works.
How to unpatch the Sliquifier on the Black Ops 2 Zombies map Die Rise in 2023. The Sliquifier was patched back in 2013 shortly after the launch of Die Rise due to being so incredibly OP, but not many people know that there's a way to unpatch it in game. All you have to do is build the Sliquifier like normal and then go over to the building that you spawned in. Right before you get to the slide that takes you into the upside down room with the box location, there's a sign off the ledge to the left. Simply shoot 10 shots of the Sliquifier at the sign in rapid succession and it'll be unpatched. I'm not really sure if this was a glitch or if the devs left this in as a secret way to unpatch the gun, but it works and makes getting to high rounds so much easier, as well as returning the gun to its original glory.
Now there is multiple videos that end up saying the exact same thing, but the reason why I want to reference this specific video is one of the top rated comments is from one of my own subscribers, which is Dr. Edward Richtofen, who I recently just shouted out for being one of my most loyal subscribers as of recently. He says, and I quote, "The reason that this works is because there's a failure to close meshes in between textures on that billboard, which causes your Sliquifier shots to fall through the mesh down to the bottom of the map, and definitely stacking your shots on top of each other, effectively stacking your damage infinitely." So this is 100% a glitch, and I know totally looks suspicious, but it's just very much out of coincidence. I promise you guys I would not steer you wrong and end up including this in an episode had I believed that there was even the slightest chance that this was fake. Which I understand that no matter what I do to try to prove to you that this is real, that some of you are going to believe that this is fake. But I trust my one subscriber, and I did my research, and I'm fairly confident that despite how silly this looks, that this third myth here is confirmed. I probably will never end up understanding why or how that this works, but I will say this is shout out to the guy that had a whole bunch of free time on his hands and was just shooting the map randomly and found this out. Myth. In BO1 Moon, can you one-shot the astronaut? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 is going to be submitted by Dr. Richtofen. In fact, I believe this is the exact same Richtofen, which is kind of funny. So guys, I am going to end up trying to one-shot the astronaut in BO1 Zombies, which is going to be a little bit harder to do because I'm used to the mechanics of everything being overpowered within Black Ops 3. There's only so many things in Black Ops 1 that can do a lot of damage, so what am I going to do? Well, the first thing that I thought was to end up taking a Pack-a-Punch Dragunov and shoot him right in the face, because this is one of the best guns for killing George Romero on Call of the Dead, who is statistically one of the strongest zombie bosses ever with 250,000 health per player. Now, yes, the astronaut is not nearly as strong as George Romero, but I thought that, hey, if this does damage to George, why not end up using the same strategy and be overkill on the astronaut? So here he is, I'm going to shoot him right in the face, and boom, he is dead. Instantly deleted. So the Dragunov is the best course of action for doing this, and that means that the 4th myth is confirmed. If you want to one-shot the astronaut, shoot him in the face with a Dragunov. Alrighty guys, and now it's time for the final myth, and once again it is going to be, can you predict when the mystery box is going to move? So just like the other crazy fake-ass sounding myths that were in this video, how exactly am I going to end up trying to go about doing this? Well, my friends, that is something that is going to actually show you here right now. Myth. Can you predict when the mystery box will move locations? Alrighty guys, so the very last myth is going to be submitted in by my buddy Dan. Now the moment you have been waiting for is about to be revealed. How exactly are we going to do this? Well, this is what we're going to do. We are only testing this in one single specific instance. The very first mystery box that you get when you freshly boot up a brand new game, that specific mystery box in Black Ops 1 in particular, every single time will give you exactly 8 guns, and on the 9th spin, you will get a teddy bear. That is going to be the prediction that we're air quote making, so that way you can figure out when it's going to move. Supposedly, this is something that was built into the code for the mystery box on Black Ops 1, and that's why the box is supposed to function this way. And it does make somewhat sense, given the fact that it's your first mystery box. They would not want to have it where the players would have it go away after like one single spin or something like that, so I totally understand why there's probably a few attempts for at least your very first mystery box. But let me ask you guys something. Do you even believe that this is true? I want to get your takes and opinions on this because the result at the end is going to be not something that you're expecting. And if you guys have been watching the video very closely and keeping track of all the box spins in the background, you will know that I'm about to get my 8th and 9th pull on the mystery box. So on this 9th attempt here, I should, according to this strategy, guaranteed get a teddy bear. And I do. Now, obviously, and understandably so, you guys would just say that, okay, that was a one-off, that's not going to happen twice. So to make sure that that wasn't a fluke, we're going to try that again. So here is going to be some gameplay of my buddy Dan trying it. So he got his first box spin right here with an L96, his second one was a CZ, his third one is a Thunder Gun, his fourth mystery box spin is going to end up being another CZ75, his fifth is going to end up being the AUG Assault Rifle, his sixth is going to end up being the HK LMG, his next attempt is going to end up being the FAMAS, and then the very next attempt he's going to get a ballistic knife. So the last one here is going to be a teddy bear. Okay, 2 times is lucky, but what about 3 times? So here we go, we're going to do this 3 times. First gun's a Python, the second gun is going to be the Law, the third gun is going to be the Galil, the fourth gun is going to be the Ray Gun, the fifth gun is going to be the Spaz, the sixth gun is going to be once again the Python, the seventh is the Dragunov, the eighth is going to be the FAMAS, and finally, a teddy bear. Yeah, trust me, I was just as surprised as you guys. Now guys, before you go on to Black Ops 1 trying to do this for yourself, getting all excited and everything, I will say this. This little technique doesn't work all the time. Here is me trying this technique once again, and I ended up getting a teddy bear not after 9 attempts, but I got it after 6 attempts, which is going to be significantly less. Now strangely, this was the one time that I ended up playing on the Steam copy because my Plutonium kept crashing, and I noticed that it was only different on Steam. On Plutonium, every single time, me and Dan, without fail, had it happen after 9 attempts. And every single time that I did on Steam, it was inconsistent. So I don't know if this is a Plutonium-only thing, or I don't know if this is going to be just something that's just down to absolutely pure chance. But there is a little bit of a technique going on here. It's not completely irrefutable. And because of that, I'm going to label the last myth as plausible. There is something going on here that allows you to legitimately predict when the mystery box is going to move. It doesn't happen every single time, but you will at least have better odds than just being completely random. And this whole myth is about odds, it's about prediction, and I am very confident saying that, yes, you can very easily at least air quote predict when the box is going to move. And I think that that's cool. But yeah. Myth. In World at War, does double tap deplete the flamethrower faster? Alright guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by DugTyler. So I'm about to end up getting the flamethrower out of the mystery box, and then I'm going to shoot it for you guys so you can get a feel for the base speed, and then I'm going to end up shooting it with double tap to see if it will deplenish its ammo a lot quicker than if I didn't have it. Now upon looking back at the footage here in my editing software, it looks like that the flamethrower takes about 5 seconds or so to fully deplete its ammo, because I'm going off of how long it takes for it to stop shooting and not necessarily how long it takes for that icon in the lower right to fill back up. So let's see now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks like based off of the footage and also what I found online via this right here from the Call of Duty wiki, it looks like that the flamethrower is not affected by double tap, at least in the traditional sense. It looks like instead of shooting faster, it just gets more damage. Now I know it does say that it overheats faster, but that does not match up with the footage I got. I think that that's the exception. What do you think? So myth number 1 here is actually going to end up being busted, which surprises me because I thought that double tap would affect everything in the game, but it looks like it affects the flamethrower just ever so slightly differently. So I'm curious what's going to happen with the second myth here. Myth. In World at War, does Speed Cola replenish the flamethrower faster? So for myth 2, we're going to include something that we found out when testing out myth 1, which is about how Speed Cola affects the flamethrower. So I'm curious if the flamethrower is going to be also slightly treated differently when it comes to Speed Cola, just like how it was with double tap, since technically it doesn't shoot bullets, it just shoots fire. And when I'm comparing the Speed Cola footage side by side with the non-Speed Cola footage, they once again look very similar, if not identical, just like how the double tap one was. So I'm going to say that it's safe to say that this is busted too, because they look almost literally identical despite the slight frame tearing that I was getting in the footage for some reason, which I apologize for that. But in conclusion here, for both technically Myth 1 and 2, I don't think that the perks affect the flamethrower in the ways that they affect most bullet guns or most guns in general. I feel like that they do have slightly different mechanics, even if I don't know entirely what all those entail. But if any of you guys know about how that the flamethrower works with perks via like a reference of a wiki article or something, feel free to share that with me, and I will then go back and edit the footage accordingly if something needs to be tweaked for the video. Myth: does the quick revive side of Verrucht cost more to get to power than the Juggernog side? Alrighty guys, so here we are within Verrucht on Black Ops 3. Now for those of you guys that don't know how Verrucht works, there is actually 2 spawns within this map. There's going to be a side where you have Quick Revive, and there's going to be a side where you have Juggernog. Now both of these sides have different routes in order to get to the power, which is going to be where the mystery box is on the map. So our goal here is to keep track of how expensive the doors are to get to the power from the Juggernog side and the Quick Revive side, and see which one is more expensive. Now, so far for the Juggernog side, we have only had 3 doors in total, with 2 of them costing $750, and then 1 of them costing $1,000. So, pretty decent amount of money so far, but now we gotta test out the Quick Revive side, so let's test it out. So, we've got door number 1. So far we've got a door that costs $750, and then we're gonna go up here, and then we got this next barrier right here, which that second one cost $1,000. Then we're gonna be going over to the third area right here. This is another $750. And then we've got another 1,000. So far this is already more than the Juggernog side, but we still have one more door, which is also going to be $750. So for Juggernog, you're looking at a total of 3 barricades or doors, and for the Quick Revive side, you're looking at 5 of them, which is going to mean that Quick Revive is indeed, yes, more expensive, which means that the myth is confirmed. You're best off going to the Juggernog side, unless you're playing solo and you want to get Quick Revive. So you have to end up making a choice if rather you would prefer to end up spending more money and end up getting Quick Revive, or end up spending less money but risking your life and not getting Quick Revive. Myth: does killing time prevent a downed player from bleeding out? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 is going to be submitted in by Lava, and this one's pretty straightforward. So Tyler is going to end up killing himself by blowing himself up with a grenade, and then once he's just right about to die, I'm going to pop killing time and see if whether or not that this will stop him from dying and give me more chance of a time to revive him. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the only Gobblegum in the game that has a intended purpose of delaying bleed out time is going to end up being Coagulant, but nobody runs Coagulant. But feel free to let me know in the comments down below if you think that this myth is going to end up being confirmed or busted, because if it is confirmed, this will give another added use to killing time, and also give us another reason to never use Coagulant ever again. So there we go. We're about to see if whether or not Tyler's about to die, so he's just about to bleed out. I'm going to pop killing time right now. And it looks like that if he ends up bleeding out, he will die. It doesn't end up getting affected whether or not I use killing time. His character still dies nonetheless if I don't pick him up. So the myth is busted. You can't end up using killing time to delay your teammates' bleed out. You actually have to use Coagulant for that specifically instead. Alrighty guys, and now we're moving on to the final myth of today's episode. And once again, it is going to be, can you one-shot George Romero in Call of the Dead? And I always like to specify this whenever I'm doing any myths revolving around George. George has 250,000 health per player in the lobby, so even in a solo game, George is basically impossible to kill within a timely fashion. So to one-shot him, my hopes aren't necessarily that high, but I'm looking forward to testing it nonetheless. So let's hop over to Siberia, go over to Call of the Dead, and see if we can one-shot George Romero. Myth: can you one-shot George Romero? Alrighty guys, so for the last myth of the episode, this is going to be submitted in by Scallywag. Now, in order to end up giving myself the best odds, I'm going to give myself a Pack-a-Punch Dragunov and wait for a insta-kill to drop. Now, I know there is going to be some people that will mention that, yes, you can hypothetically one-shot George with the VR-11, but I'm going to go off of the presumption that Scallywag did not mean that when he was asking for the myth. He was asking most likely for a bullet gun. So I'm going to use the Dragunov instead of the VR-11. Alright, so in a second here, I'm about to get an insta-kill from the zombie I kill, and then I'm going to shoot George Romero in the head. So we're going to just hope that a headshot's good enough. So leave your prayers in the comments down below, because it's most likely not going to work. But here we go. I'm going to shoot George. And just like I thought, all I did was piss him off. So that means that the final myth of today's episode is busted. I figured that this was most likely not going to work given the fact that George has just ungodly amounts of HP. But if you do want to get rid of him for hypothetically less ammo, you can always get the VR11. Myth. If you use the Gobblegum Create power on monkey bombs, will they be upgraded? Alrighty guys, myth number 1 is submitted in by Scallywag. Now, on Garada Krovi, there is a Easter egg that you can do that will upgrade your monkey bombs for you, and we're going to see if we can bypass this Easter egg by just using a Gobblegum. The Create Power Gobblegum allows you to pack-a-punch whatever gun you get out of the mystery box. So would this also work on the monkey bombs? Because technically, there is a 50-50 chance it may or may not, because things like the Apothecary Servant on Revelations, that doesn't work using this method. But did they overlook the monkey bombs? Because the monkey bombs are a equipment piece, and this is different than the Apothecary Servant. So we're going to pull monkey bombs here any second now, and I'm going to give myself the Gobblegum in our inventory. I believe I get it right after the L4 Siege, and then we're going to see if whether or not that will pack-a-punch it. The way we can tell is if we end up using the monkey bomb and the glowing aura around it becomes the color red instead of blue. So I'm picking up the monkey bombs now. My Gobblegum did go away, which is a good sign, but I am going to throw one just in case. So here we go. Let's throw the monkey bomb, and it looks like that it is indeed red. So they are upgraded with this Gobblegum, which means the myth is confirmed. If you want to skip the Easter egg, just do this instead. Myth. Does a max ammo replenish ammo to a support weapon in Cold War? Alrighty guys, so here is myth number 2. So me and Dan are playing on Forsaken and Cold War, about to kill the Abomination boss, which will drop us a max ammo here shortly. I have got a death machine and Dan has got a flamethrower, and we're going to see if whether or not the max ammo will give us our ammo back. So the Abomination is about to die any second now. He's just a little bit of a bullet sponge, so just give me a second. So there he is, and now a max ammo has spawned. I'm going to pull out my death machine so you guys see I only have 45 bullets. And I'm going to walk into it right now, and even though I got a max ammo, the death machine still remains at 45 bullets. So the myth's busted. It only affects your main weapon and not your kill streak weapon. Myth. Does the nuke power-up kill zombies all over an Outbreak map? Alrighty guys, myth 3 is submitted in by Tyler. Now Dan's across the other side of the map, and I'm going to be trying to kill zombies, and so is he, until one of us gets a nuke. The reason why we're trying to do this is because we want to see if whether or not that the game can handle a nuke being able to kill every single zombie with the entirety of an Outbreak map, or will the game just simply not let you do it because it's trying to prevent crashing. Now, even though it took a minute, Dan eventually got a nuke, and I do happen to run across a zombie right around the time that he accidentally picks it up, and my zombie does not die. You can see it right before your very eyes. So it's busted because my zombie would have died around the time that that nuke was picked up, because there was even a frame where the nuke icon was still on my screen and my zombie was still alive. So it means that the nuke will only kill the nearby enemies in Outbreaks, that way your game doesn't crash, which is smart because then we don't have an issue like we did with Transit. Myth. Can you force a rocket test on Drages by spawning in a power-up? Alrighty guys, the 4th myth is submitted in by Dan. Now, the Drages rocket test, for most people, they assume it's just completely random, which is to be fair, because nobody really knows how the mechanics of this thing works. But what the game is looking for is that it's looking for a certain amount of actions to take place. And one of the actions, that way you can force it to go off, is by picking up a drop. If you get a max ammo, a nuke, a death machine, any drop really, you can force the rocket to go off. Now, I just want to let you guys know is that it's not instantaneous. It's not going to be the moment that you pick up a drop, it'll do something. So it might look here from the footage that it just is pure coincidence that the rocket does happen to go off. But even I don't entirely know what it exactly is triggered by. So I'm just going to just show you guys the best footage that we got, which is just it happening. You guys can take my word for it if you believe me or not. But in a second here, Dan is going to pick up a death machine, and then the rocket test is going to go off. So there is the death machine drop on the floor, Dan picks it up, and then just a few seconds later, the rocket test is starting to commence, which means that the 4th myth for today's video is confirmed. If you want to trigger the rocket test, although be it it's not a perfect solution or system, you can just spawn in a drop with one of your Gobblegums. Alrighty guys, it is final myth time. Once again, it is going to be, can you freeze the robots on Origins with killing time? Let's do it. Myth. Can you use killing time to freeze the robots on Origins? Alrighty guys, the very last myth is submitted in by Dead Sled 8. So I just gave myself killing time, and now I'm going to no-clip over to the first robot that I see. It doesn't have to be a particular foot or anything, I'm just going to pick a random spot. So let's go over to Gen 3, because that looks like a good area to be, and I'm just going to wait. So let me know in the comments if you guys think that this is going to end up being confirmed or busted. I am curious myself. So the robot is making his way over slowly but surely, and I'm going to just hope for the best. I don't necessarily know what to expect, so here we go, guys. Here comes the foot. 1, 2, and 3. I pop the gobble gum, but it looks like I still got crushed nonetheless. And you guys can see that once the foot gets off of me, the killing time is still ticking, which means not only activated, but it just didn't do anything. So the last myth is busted. Although, be it fun fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but there is an old Codename Pizza video where for his myth busting series, which this series takes inspiration from, he ended up testing this exact idea, and when he did it, this was like before Chronicles even released. It was when they filmed footage back at the early Treyarch recording sessions, and it was confirmed back then. It's just that it got patched for some reason. Myth: can you one-shot the astronaut with a Bowie knife in BO1 Moon? Alrighty guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted by Scallywag. Now, we tested a myth similar to this before on the channel, where we tried to see if we could end up meleeing the astronaut to death on Moon in Black Ops 3 zombies, because there's gobblegums like Swordflay in that game. But there's no crazy gobblegums in Black Ops 1 zombies, so what happens if we just use a Bowie knife by itself, with at the very most maybe an insta-kill on top of that? So let's head over to the astronaut and see if we can one-shot our boy. So when he grabs me, I hit him right in the face, and it not only didn't kill him, but it was also not enough damage to be able to kill him before he teleports me, because I was able to stab him successfully twice. So that means that the first myth is going to end up being busted, but because this is a Christmas special, I am going to do something kind of cheeky and just call it coal, because nobody likes getting coal on Christmas. Myth: in Black Ops 2 Origins, will a downed player not be able to pick up a zombie blood power-up? Alrighty guys, so myth 2 is going to be submitted in by Lava. Now, I was only in a solo player lobby this session because nobody was able to join me on this given day since it was really close to Christmas, but I didn't want to give up on this myth, so I decided to try this just by myself. So this is how I ended up testing it. What I decided to do was that I decided to purchase Quick Revive, and I was going to wait until I got a zombie blood. Upon getting a zombie blood, I was going to kill myself so that way I down, but I don't end up dying, and then I can just walk underneath of the zombie blood for the duration while Quick Revive is trying to get me back up. So as you guys can see, I'm walking right underneath of the zombie blood, and it's not picking it up. But as soon as I end up getting revived, I will immediately be in zombie blood. Here is also another way of looking at it, even though this is technically Black Ops 3, and this is going to end up being gameplay where I end up getting other drops along with zombie blood while I'm downed, and I'm able to pick up the others just fine, with the exception of zombie blood, which just still floats above my head. Therefore showing you can get drops while downed, minus the exception of this specific drop. So this myth is also going to be busted or coal again because we were not able to get the zombie blood while down successfully. Myth: if you get a random perk at the perk limit and get downed with the aftertaste gobblegum, can you drink a 5th perk? Alrighty guys, so myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by Sand Nudes. Now, I do believe that I did this the way that Sand Nudes intended, but Sand Nudes, if I did not, please feel free to correct me. But I do believe I did it correctly, so this is what I'm doing. I am here on the Giants with 5 perks. I'm purposely going to down while having aftertaste, so that way the only perk that disappears is Quick Revive. But nonetheless, I still am at the perk limit of 4 perks. So, what's going to happen here? If I end up keeping aftertaste in my inventory, am I allowed to buy back Quick Revive, or in this case, technically buy a 5th perk even though I shouldn't be able to? Or is it going to enforce the 4 perk limit, therefore meaning I can't get Quick Revive back? That's what we're trying to test with this exact myth. I hope that wording makes sense. So I jogged my ass all the way over back to the Quick Revive machine, and when I go to try to buy it, it does not let me. So this means that if you're already at the 4 perk limit when you end up downing, regardless of whether or not you have aftertaste, it's not going to make an exception for you saying you can get the 5th perk back that you had before. It's going to enforce the 4 perk limit. So that means that the 3rd myth is also going to be busted, or another set of coal. Sorry about this, guys. I guess you got coal this Christmas, but here's hoping we can turn around with myth number 4. Let's see if we can try to get you guys something special like a present. Myth: can Leroy fight witches in Buried if you give him candy? Alrighty guys, so here is myth number 4. So we're in the witch's house on Buried. Now there's only one instance in Buried where the witches and Leroy would be able to interact, which is when you were just coming out of the witch's house and going into the maze, because Leroy does not go through the witch's house with you, he will instead go around it. So here he is, and now I'm about to give him the candy, and I got one witch left, and it looks like he does indeed attack them if you give him candy, as long as you do it before the time runs out, which is really hilarious because seeing Leroy basically RKO the witch is just something you don't see every day. So yeah, that means that the fourth myth is not only confirmed, but it's going to mean that everyone here gets a present instead of coal for once, because that seemed to be the track record for most of this episode. So shout out to everybody that watched through the episode, you now get a present. Alrighty guys, but now for the best present of all, the very final myth of today's episode. So once again, we are going to be seeing if whether or not you can one-shot the Panzer Sovat in Black Ops 2 or Black Ops 3 zombies. You guys really seem to love these myths that involve one-shotting the bosses or killing them in like less than 5 seconds, so I'm here to provide another one here with the Panzer Sovats. So let's hop over to Origins, Der Eisendrache, and a couple of other maps and see if whether or not that we can one-shot the Panzer. Myth: can you one-shot the Panzer? Alrighty guys, so here is the last myth. Now I've got a couple of ideas about how that we can one-shot the Panzer Sovat, minus the exception of using the Panzer Gauntlet on Der Eisendrache, and also using something absurdly crazy like spamming him with G-strikes. So I'm going to first end up pack-a-punching the DSR, one of the strongest sniper rifles within Black Ops 2, and I'm just going to shoot him square in the face. See if whether or not that a sniper rifle is enough, or if we have to use something more crazy, like a wonder weapon, which we'll test on later on in the video. So as you guys can see, I shoot him right in the face. Plain as day. I shoot him right in the temple, and he ends up getting a hit marker and still attacks me. Absolutely absurd. I don't know why he was able to tank a bolt to the face, but my guess is that it's just going to be the fact that his armor is just genuinely that good. It's only with the follow-up shot, where he's bringing me in with his claw, that I shoot him in the face and he actually will drop to the ground. But this is technically a two-shot, we need to keep trying. So this time I decided to pull no punches. I decided to pack-a-punch a Ray Gun Mark II in Black Ops 3 Origins and try it this way. And this time when I shoot him in the face, you'd be surprised to see this, but once again, he ends up taking the shot. He does not die. All I did was just break his face mask, and he's still attacking me. So first of all, wow, I am shocked at the fact that the Panzer survived that. But also, too, I'm also going to have to point out here, is that even if this was confirmed anyways, the Ray Gun Mark II is a 3-shot burst, so technically I am breaking my own rules, but I was curious to see if even this was strong enough, which it wasn't, it looks like. So if the Panzer wants to bring a flamethrower to a gunfight, I'm going to bring a bazooka, because that's going to be my next weapon of choice. I've got a pack-a-punched rocket launcher, and I'm going to shoot him in the face. If this does not one-shot him, I'm going to be shocked. And it looks like I'm shocked, because he tanked it again! Like, bro, like, a rocket to the face? It once again took 2 shots to be able to kill him. What the hell is that face mask made out of? Okay, now we're on Rev, and I've got a pack-a-punched thunder gun. I am not dicking around this time. I'm going to be using one of the strongest guns in COD Zombies history, and I'm going to shoot him. Here we go. Alright, Panzer, now you're just fucking with me at this point. And believe it or not, the Thunder Gun was the worst of all the guns I tried. It took not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 shots to the face before he would end up sitting down. That is absurd. Alright, Panzer, now I'm going mythological and biblical on your ass by pulling out the lightning bow on Der Eisendrache and shooting you in the face with this, because at this point I am running out of options and patience, and if this does not one-shot you, I don't know what will. It's like, he literally is tanking everything. He even tanked the freaking lightning bow! How? Like, how? See, you can call this stubbornness, and you can call this pettiness, but I am not willing to say that this is busted. I swear to God that I'm just getting unlucky. So this is what I'm going to do. I am going to label this as plausible, or because it's a Christmas special, I'm going to label this as mistletoe because I think it's cool. This is going to end up being plausible off of the sole fact that I believe that I am just getting unlucky. I do not believe that the Panzer is able to take a shot to the face from a sniper rifle, a rocket launcher, a Ray Gun Mark II, a lightning bow, and the Thunder Gun. I believe if all the stars align that I would be able to one-shot the Panzer. I just have not ended up having that happen yet. But please let me know if you guys have ever been able to achieve this in the comments down below. Myth: Does using the suppressor attachment on the DSR and BO2 not wake up zombies stunned by an EMP grenade when you shoot? Alrighty guys, so the first myth is submitted in by Grim Citizen 3. So Grim, thank you for leaving your very first myth here on the channel. I greatly appreciate you. And by the way guys, just like this myth, I noticed that there was a lot of thumbs up on it because you guys really seem to like this myth. If there is a myth going forward that you guys really like, I highly encourage you guys to support each other's comments by dropping likes on them, so that way I know which myths to prioritize, so please do that. But yes, in today's video for the first myth, we're going to see if whether or not that when you throw an EMP at a zombie because it makes them basically fall asleep, if I shoot a suppressed DSR, is the DSR loud enough that it will still wake them up regardless if the suppressor is on it. So I'm going to shoot at one right now, and you guys will see that when I shoot at the zombie, he will still chase me and wake back up, regardless of whether or not that I have a suppressor on. So the first myth is busted, and to me this is kind of dumb because the suppressor on the DSR and the EMP grenade in transit are both basically useless, and the fact that this is one scenario where I can see them both being justified if you combine them together and it still doesn't work, this just shows you that there is just sometimes just things that are beyond saving. Myth: can you kill the Avogadro in BO2 with only the jet gun? Alrighty guys, so myth number 2 is going to be submitted in by Ace of Spades. So Ace, your myth here is going to be very quick, my friend, because this is something that I already know the result to. The answer is no, you cannot kill the Avogadro with a jet gun, because you can only end up killing him with melee attacks. That is how Treyarch has specifically designed this boss. However, I'm still going to showcase this nonetheless, so that way you can see it for yourself before your own very eyes. So shortly here, via console commands, I'm going to give myself the jet gun and just use it on the Avogadro. And as you guys can see, it's not doing anything to him. I would have killed him by now, considering the fact that the jet gun is one of the strongest guns in transit. So that means that the second myth is busted. Myth: can you kill Brutus before he leaves his platform in Blood of the Dead after crossing the catwalk? Alrighty guys, so the third myth is going to be submitted in by my friend Tyler. Now, in this myth, I'm going to try to shoot Brutus when he's standing on the platform where he does this whole speech, spiel, rise my minions, yada yada crap that he does in Blood of the Dead when you're crossing this specific section of the map. I have a LMG and a ray gun Mark II, and when I get close to him, I'm going to just lay my bullets into him. I'm going to see if this can kill him before he's done with his speech. And the thing is that right now, as I'm shooting him, it looks like it's not even giving me a hit marker. He's just doing his own thing, and then he ends up teleporting away, and I'm left to get killed by his minions. But thank God I have Dying Wish. Now, here is the thing, is that you guys are going to see here in a second that when Brutus spawns back into the map, where he's like just running around as his normal boss self, I will once again shoot him with the ray gun Mark II, and you guys are going to see that I can kill him with basically 2 bursts. And I shot him a lot more than 2 bursts worth when he was standing on that platform. So you guys are going to see me here shooting him right in the face, and right as I shoot him, he just drops. So that means that the third myth is also busted because I know I shot him for a lot more than just 2 bursts worth of ammo when he was on that platform, and if they were to connect, he would have already been dead. But it wouldn't acknowledge my bullets I was shooting at him, it wouldn't give me a hit marker or anything, it's just like as if he was invincible. Myth: can you run faster through lava if you hold a turbine? Alrighty guys, so for myth number 4, the way I'm going to test it is that I'm just going to pick a spot in the map, and I'm just going to run back and forth from point A to point B without the turbine and see how long it takes me, and then I'm going to do it again while holding the turbine and see if I can move quicker when I'm holding it, going in those same directions. So here I am just running from the transit bus all the way to the fog, and then here it is with me holding the turbine. And here's the thing, is that this is hard to like explain, but in the testing it felt faster, even though visually it's not going to be any faster for you guys because it takes about the same amount of seconds as it was without the turbine to get to point A to point B. If you've been keeping track of how long it takes me from the bus to get to the fog, it's roughly about 4 seconds. What I encourage you guys to do is that if you don't end up thinking that this myth is confirmed, do me a favor and load up Transit and try this for yourself, because you will understand what I mean about how it feels faster, even though it doesn't necessarily look faster. Now, even though I think it's confirmed, I can't end up saying it's confirmed because it's just a feeling. I don't have any actual proof. So, based off of the way that I know that the footage looks, but also acknowledging how I feel, I'm labeling the myth at plausible, so that way I can end up meeting somewhere in the middle. It's just a feel thing. I cannot explain it. You would just have to try for yourself to get what I mean. So because I can't prove it, you guys are just going to have to take my word for it, but we're going to meet in the middle and say plausible. Alrighty guys, and now it is time for the final myth, and once again it is going to be, can you build the lightning staff in Origins in 5 minutes or less? Genuine question. Do you guys think that we will be able to do it? I am curious. Let me know via the comment section down below. But with all that being said, guys, let's do the final myth. Myth. Can you build the lightning staff on Origins in less than 5 minutes? Alrighty guys, so here is the final myth. Now I do just want to let you guys know is that normally when it comes to the final myth, I try not to drag it out too long, but since this myth is about trying to complete something in 5 minutes or less without splicing the footage and making you guys think that I cheated, I'm going to have to show you everything. So this might be a long myth, but I think you guys will like the result. So this is going to be a lot of talking. But yes, the way I'm going to be doing this is that me and Dan are going to be working together to try to be as efficient as we can. Now, in my mind, the way I would like to imagine this is that if we got God RNG and everyone in the lobby got shopping free, so that way you could do this legitimately. So that's what we're going to be doing. We are going to be giving ourselves shopping frees and running around the map. The moment that I give myself my first shopping free, there's going to be a timer on screen, and then we're going to be seeing how long it will take us. Now, with that being said, since there only was 2 of us, we're going to give ourselves each 2 different shopping frees. Dan gets 2 and I get 2 to mimic if we had 4 players and everybody got a shopping free. So shortly here, I'm about to activate mine, and Dan's going to go the opposite way of me. So here we go. I'm giving myself shopping free, and I'm running now. The objective here is to end up having it where I end up opening the tank side of things, so that way I can start collecting the staff parts, while Dan also is going to go to Gen 4 to try to get the lightning disc. Because if this was just a solo game, there would be no way in absolute hell that this would even work. In fact, actually, there's going to be a main point I'm going to be talking about at the very end of the video, so make sure you guys stay tuned, because it's going to affect the final result. I also want to point out, by the way, why Dan is turning on Gen 3. What we found out from doing an attempt before this is that you cannot pick up any of the staff parts that are on the tank route if a generator is not turned on. I assume that this is because Treyarch assumes that if you're trying to go for the lightning staff and you've not turned on the power, you're probably most likely cheating, which makes sense, although you could just be doing a no power challenge. Let me know if you guys would like to see that as a future video. But anywho, basically I'm about to go on to the tank now with the very end of my very first shopping free. Also, by the way, an additional point I would like to point out is that I'm going to have no clip on for portions where I just miss the tank jumps, because technically there's moments where I'm just bad and I miss, and you guys would understand that the no clip is just a makeup for lost time if I miss the jump, because basically the second that I use with no clip is negligible if it actually affected the time, which, by the way, just so you guys know, it's not gonna, because I already know what the final result is, but you guys can be the judge of that. Now, there's something really critical that's going to make or break this myth, is how long does it take for the tank to end up recharging? Because for those of you guys that forgot, the Origins tank has to recharge. It is not going to be usable 24/7, and I don't remember what the time is. So for me, this felt like nerve-wracking, because genuinely so. There was moments when I was testing this for the first few times where I was like, I think I might be able to do it, and I think I might not be able to do it. There was no like, oh my god, I know for sure that I can do this, or oh my god, I know for sure that I'm not going to be able to do this type of thing. Anywho, I got at least the very first piece, so kudos to me. We so far at just over 2 minutes. But now this is the part that sucks. We have to wait for the tank to recharge. I'm going to give myself a guess, because I genuinely don't know, even looking back on it. Like, this is my first time looking back at the footage in my editing software here. I want to guess it's about like a minute to like a minute and a half that it takes the tank to recharge. It felt like a long time, or at least it did, in terms of like the fact that I was trying to rush and the game wouldn't let me, because there's no workaround as far as I'm aware for trying to get the lightning staff parts unless you use the tank, which is the only legitimate method, unless you want to cheat, that is, which we didn't want to do because we wanted to see if you could do this in a legit game. See, the things like the ice staff, the fire staff, and the wind staff are all going to be basically impossible, because the ice staff is RNG, the wind staff's a little bit of RNG too. The fire you can sort of control, but it's just like it takes forever to get certain pieces because you have to wait till like round 8 to kill a Panzer. So that's why I chose lightning. I even mentioned how in one of my hot takes videos that I really do like the lightning staff because I feel like I can build it quick and efficiently. And this is exactly my point. I feel that genuinely I can build it around in like 5 minutes or less. I'm pretty proactive, especially with BO3 where there's Gobblegums, because there's no way in hell this would work without Gobblegums. If this was in Black Ops 2, this would probably take me, I want to say, 15 minutes. Alright, so I believe right around here is when the tank is finally good to go again. And I think it was pretty accurate with my guess, where I think it was around like a minute and a half that took to recharge. So here we go. And just so you guys know, also, I'd like to clarify something. If you're wondering where, if like in a legit game, if I would be able to have access to a Gobblegum machine to get these shopping frees, there's a Gobblegum machine at Gen 2. So after my first one wore off, around the time that I activated the tank and getting the first lightning staff piece, I ended up getting what would be my second shopping free right as the tank is going back around and hitting Gen 2. So this is pretty legit so far. Now, I just want to point out here also as well, is that when I went to go get my piece, Dan didn't know where the lightning staff piece was. He just doesn't build the staff, so I had to help him out by going and flying with no clip myself. This was the part I was telling you guys about where I needed to use no clip to help my buddy out. So here I am just going back to the tank, so that way I would make up for what Dan was supposed to do, but it's no hard feelings, Dan. So yes, here we are. We're landing on the tank, and I'm about to go get the third piece now. And unfortunately, we're cutting it very close. I don't know if you guys have been necessarily keeping track of the timer or if you're rather just listening to my voice, but I just collected the final piece. So we have all the pieces plus the disc. But it's about to be 5 minutes, and the one thing that you may or may not have noticed so far is that we don't have the lightning staff crystal, which therefore means that we're about to run out of time in the next few seconds. So by myself and with another player, this wouldn't be possible. However, though, I would like to circle back to what I was talking about a few moments ago, where I said I do have something that I would like to say that will end up being very critical when it comes to the result of this myth. At least solo and with another player, you cannot do this. But I want to keep showing the footage here in the background as I'm also mentioning this point, by the way, is that I would like to believe that if you had 4 players and you did the following of what I'm about to say, our odds would have been better. So what we would do is that me and Dan, if we were to play, like, let's say with my buddies Tyler and Glabersko, we would do this. Me and Dan would still do what we just did with the footage you are watching in this very moment, where we were going on the tank and getting all the pieces. Dan would still get the lightning disc, I would still ride the tank with him, and that would not change. If we had Glabersko and Tyler, one of them we would have go over to the excavation site and get the gramophone, so that way the other one could also go get that crystal that we failed to get within the time limit. If Glabersko, for example, like let's say went to the excavation site and then picked up the gramophone again, so Tyler could go into the lightning cave, go get the crystal, and then upon picking up the crystal, then Glabersko could go downstairs and build the lightning staff once all the pieces have been assembled within everybody's inventory, because anybody can build any staff once everyone has collected at least the parts somewhere in the map. So therefore, since me and Dan only took about 8.5 minutes with just the 2 of us, I want to say that the last myth could be plausible only if you had 4 players. It is obviously busted with less than that, but genuinely so. I believe that if all the stars align, it's at very least plausible. I'm not going to give it confirmed until I can prove it one day, but I'm going to go with plausible because I think what I said makes sense. Let me know if you guys think it makes sense in the comment section down below, and also just let me know what you thought about the final myth. When the quick revive machine leaves after purchasing it 3 times in solo, will there still be a hitbox where it used to be? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by my boy, DugTyler. Now, this one's just going to be quick just because it's simple in nature, so all I'm doing is just wasting quick revive so that way the machine will eventually float up in the air and disappear, but I am going to just quickly lean up against so I can see where the hit scan roughly lies. So here's my last quick revive. I'm going to prone next to the machine to show you guys where the exact hitbox for it is, and now it's going to disappear, and I'm just going to walk up to where it originally once was. And when I do, it looks like that it allows me to still be able to touch the wall and go past the hitbox, because originally before I would have not been able to go right up to that wall, but now I can. And I also did do this on the quick revive machine in Kino just to make sure that this wasn't a fluke, but it was also the same case with Kino. I was able to run right where the Quick Revive machine used to be. But I do swear I remember the Kino der Toten one on Black Ops 1 did have this exact mechanic where the Quick Revive machine was just invisible and you still couldn't run up against the wall, but maybe I was wrong. So Myth 1's busted because I'm not going to test every single possible Quick Revive location because that'd just be really ridiculous of an ask for something as simple as this. It very well could be in one of the different games. It also very well could be just a fluke or a glitch, which means that you wouldn't be able to replicate it again anyways. But since this myth is so simple, I'm not going to read too much into it, and just say it's at least busted for the game I tried it on, which is Black Ops 1. Myth. Is Juggernog and Pack-a-Punch usable before turning on the power in Kino der Toten? Alrighty guys, so myth number 2 is going to be submitted in by Sandnudes. Now this is a very valid question because in the newer games like Cold War, not every perk requires the entire map to be powered up in order to purchase a perk. You can buy things like Juggernog and Stamina Up on D Machine without it, but in Kino der Toten specifically, you must have the power turned on. Not only to be able to purchase the thing, but to even have access to it in the first place, because in Kino, if you don't turn on the power, you can't even get to Juggernog or Pack-a-Punch because it's behind the stage curtain. So if you go over to Juggernog, it'll be off. If you go over to the teleporter, it's going to have like the hand icon, but you can't even use it. And then in a second here, I'm also going to no-clip up to the Pack-a-Punch room upstairs, but even that does not let me use it without the power being turned on. You must have the power to be able to basically purchase anything other than wall weapons and the mystery box. So myth 2 is busted as well, and now let's move on to myth number 3. Myth. Can you down yourself with a chopper gunner in Cold War? So in Black Ops Cold War, one of the things I was always uncertain about is whether or not that if I called in a kill streak like a chopper gunner, I'd be able to down myself, but I'm shooting my little yellow reticle down there, and I can't. I'm just immortal wall in this thing, which is reassuring, and so now we know that you can't kill yourself with a chopper gunner in Cold War, so the third myth is busted. Myth. Can you enter the Origins robot foot while downed? So when it comes to the robots on Origins, some players have a really hard time with them. When they're trying to get inside them to get the Windstaff parts, they might end up getting killed by a zombie they're not paying attention to, or something like that. So, if you were in a pinch and you still need to get a robot and get one of the Windstaff parts inside of it, could you still get in there hypothetically while you are downed and being revived by your Quick Revive or one of your teammates? That is exactly the scenario we're going to test right here. So I downed myself just in time. Can I get the foot open though? And it looks like I can. I hit the foot with a stray bullet, and it looks like one bullet was enough. I am now inside the robot head, and I can collect the Windstaff piece. So the fourth myth is not only confirmed, but this is also a very helpful tip if you were ever in a pinch. Alrighty guys, and now it's time for the final myth, and once again it is going to be, can you one-shot Brutus in Mob of the Dead? Just a little bit of clarification before we transition to the final myth though, because I know some people may ask, is that when it comes to this myth, the only reason why I'm testing out the Mob of the Dead version of Brutus and not also the Blood of the Dead version of Brutus is because of this main reason. With Black Ops 4 having a whole bunch of overpowered stuff, it's not necessary to test that game. With double Pack-a-Punch guns, better guns in general out of the box, having specialists, also having elixirs, in Black Ops 4 I feel like that it's more likely than not that you can probably get pretty damn close to one-shotting Brutus. And so I feel like a lot of people really don't need confirmation for that. Whereas in Mob of the Dead, I feel like there's only so many things that are like God tier status. And so the odds of one-shotting Brutus in Mob are a lot lower, and I feel like that if we can be able to prove it in Mob, that would be able to not only help players get better at the game because they can rely on something to kill Brutus quickly, but it also means that it gives people a little bit of new information that they might have not known before versus Black Ops 4, which is kind of more likely than not a given. So, explanation over, let's head over to Mob of the Dead and see if you can one-shot Brutus. Myth. Can you one-shot Brutus in Mob of the Dead? So out of all the things in Mob of the Dead that I want to use to try to one-shot Brutus, the thing that first popped into my mind is the Blundergat. Specifically, one certain type of version of that wonder weapon, which is going to be the Sweeper. Most people in Mob of the Dead, when they get the Blundergat, they get the Acid Gat kit and Pack-a-Punch that into the Vitrolic Withering. But a lot of people don't end up just Pack-a-Punching the Blundergat by itself without the Acid Gat kit, and then get the upgrade variant called the Sweeper, which is just the Blundergat but stronger without the acidic effect. Alright, so now that I got enough money to Pack-a-Punch my Blundergat, I'm going to fly over to the Golden Gate Bridge. I am then going to Pack-a-Punch my Blundergat and just wait around because Brutus is guaranteed to spawn on the Golden Gate Bridge the moment you arrive there. And then once he ends up showing up, I'm just going to let him get as close as he possibly can and just shoot him square in the face. Because I feel like a shotgun or a sniper rifle is going to give me the best odds of killing him in one bullet. And also I have double tap too, which also helps. Alright, so here he is. So let's see what happens, guys. I'm going to shoot him in the face. And I indeed one-shot him. He immediately dropped down to the ground. I was actually not expecting that to happen, to be honest with you. And it wasn't just a fluke either. I actually had this happen on Brutus not only 2 times, but also 3 times because 2 more Brutuses spawned in a little bit later. So yeah, 3 times in a row I have one-shot Brutus by just shooting him in the head with the sweeper. So the last myth is not only confirmed, but if you just want to simply just not get the acid gat and just get the sweeper version, which is really not that hard to do, and you're not sacrificing a lot either, you can end up one-shotting Brutus consistently in Mob of the Dead. But yeah, guys, that is going to be here for today's video, and I do truly hope you guys ended up enjoying it. If you did, please consider dropping a like, comment, subscribe, follow, and all that beautiful stuff. Your support means a lot more than you think it does. And if you guys also have a myth of your very own that you would like to be featured in next week's episode, once again, please feel free to leave them here in the comment section down below. Or if you guys also want to, you can put them within my Discord server, which is going to be a link down below in this video's description. But with all that being said, guys, I truly hope you guys end up enjoying seeing another YouTube video from the most unique YouTubers you're ever going to see. Thanks for watching, guys. I love all of you, and peace out.
Hey, meme lords, Jesus here. And you better have enjoyed that video there by the eternal god Daddy Ninja. You should probably subscribe too, or the mighty Moab will come for your balls. If you enjoyed the video, you might like it too. And give me the memes. Flash, bang, boom!